Chapter 10:14. The Beidou group's predecessor had a total of 8 forces, but they were unified into 3 major sects: Lantian, Jiuyo, and Beitai. Many years ago, these 3 sects were only martial arts families. There were some differences between the Empire's family forces and the Federation's. The Federation focused on reputation and experience, while the Empire's families focused on strength. To put it bluntly, these families had a lot of talented martial artists, but they didn't have money. Without money, they couldn't buy more and better cultivation resources. At that time, Ji Qinshue's father was running a media company of a large scale, so the 3 major sects came looking for him. That was how the Beta Group was born. This situation was similar to the Federation situation, but there was a fundamental difference. Take Xinghao Xinghong as an example. The Xinghong Group was rich and powerful, and while cultivating their own people, they would also recruit martial artists for their own use. However, the Beta Group was different. The 2 parties were in a cooperative relationship. Beidou provided financial support, and the sects protected the group. However, with the rapid development of the Beta Group over the years, the 3 sects eventually merged into the great congregations of Beidou. In terms of gathering of martial artists in the Empire, the Hokuto Sokai was the largest gathering place. After the congregations grew stronger, they secretly restrained the group. With the death of Ji Qinshue's father, the group fell into Ji Qinshue's hands and gradually attracted the attention of the congregations. However, Ji Qinshuo was strong enough and managed the group well, so the congregations couldn't do anything to her. However, after the Lin Fei incident, Ji Qinshuo left the empire, and the congregations became active again. After listening to Tong Tian's information, Ding Ming had a rough understanding of the Hokuto Sokai. The congregation's goal was to cultivate martial artists. They were already limited by their financial resources and wanted to seek support from a higher level. The empire's upper echelons were undoubtedly a good choice. From this, it could be seen that when Yang wanted to lead Apocalypse, Chuangyu, and Beidou, if these 3 groups were under his control, then he would basically be in a position where even Long Lin wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Tong Tian found a small cave in a bush halfway up the mountain. After entering, there was actually an elevator that descended into a metal tunnel. Ding Ming activated his telekinesis vision and found that the underground was actually a fortress that looked like a starship. Hokuto Sokai was really something. Tong Tian was obviously very familiar with the layout of the fortress. He led Ding Ming through the various cabins and side tunnels. Ding Ming could see that this guy had avoided a lot of surveillance cameras and robotic guards. Finally, the 2 of them arrived at a narrow storeroom. Opposite the storeroom was a sealed cabin. Tong Tian explained, "Boss is locked in here." Ding Ming scanned the area. The storeroom was still quite far from the other side of the storeroom. There were 3 side tunnels in the middle, and one of them was the main tunnel. The sealed cabin was actually a rest suite, so he easily penetrated it with his telekinesis. Ji Qinshuo was indeed sitting cross-legged on the sofa, but his clothes were a little disheveled. It was obvious that he had just gone through an intense battle. His aura was much weaker, and his body was filled with a large number of more than 3 types of origin bodies. Ding Ming was a little surprised. Ji Qinshue's strength was equivalent to a mid-level galactic martial artist, but he was still subdued. Even if he was outnumbered, this proved that Hokuto Sokai had quite a few experts. At the very least, they had galactic martial artists. This was not something to be underestimated. "Let's go in," Ding Ming said decisively. "Go in." Tong Tian was stunned. There were 2 experts guarding the door to the prison. How were they going to get in? However, when he saw that Ding Ming had already swaggered onto the main tunnel, Tong Tian could only grit his teeth and follow behind him. Of course, the experts in his eyes were nothing in Ding Ming's eyes. Ding Ming casually waved his hand, and the 2 men at the door fell limply to the ground, unconscious. Tong Tian looked at Ding Ming with a gaze full of awe. He knew these 2 guards very well. Their origin energy foundations had already broken through 50 billion points, yet they had actually been subdued by Ding Ming without a sound. This was practically a miracle. After the alloy door opened, Ji Qinshuo, who was sitting on the sofa, obviously sensed it as well. She immediately opened her eyes. Tian, why are you here? Tong Tian said excitedly. Boss, Mr. Ting is here. Ji Chinxue looked at the door with a surprised expression. How did you get here? Ding Ming said casually, I've already been to the underground world beneath the Saint Planet. What's so hard about this place? Ji Chinxue's expression was somewhat apologetic. Ding Ming, I'm sorry to have troubled you again. Ding Ming walked forward and stared at her beautiful face. When we left the Silent Entropy prison, I told you that if you encountered any difficulties, you had to inform me. Why didn't you inform me this time? His tone sounded like he was reprimanding her, but there was also a hint of concern in it. Ji Chinxue revealed a gratified expression. I originally thought that this was a personal matter, and I didn't want to trouble my friends, but you still came. She was aware of the situation outside. The combined fleet had made a big move in the fertile Chalk Star system, but Ding Ming did not care about that and still came to find her first. Whether it was a divine light martial artist or a romantic relationship, this was still Ding Ming's friendship. Ding Ming took the initiative and said, Give me your hand. Ji Chinxue was slightly hesitant, but she still extended her left hand. Her hands were originally white and flawless, but now the back of her left hand was purple, like a fermented bun. Ding Ming's expression changed. You're suffering from frostbite. Ji Chinxue was an ice element expert, but now she was suffering from frostbite. This proved that the person who injured her was an even more powerful ice element expert. Ding Ming held her hand, and a small amount of telekinesis immediately entered her body. Then, a large amount of healing essence entered her body, and her origin body immediately vanished. Only a powerhouse like Ding Ming could heal her in a short amount of time. Tong Tian saw that Ji Chinxue had recovered some of his vigor and could not help but exclaim in surprise, Boss, you're fine now? Ji Chinxue smiled and nodded. I was thinking that if anyone could heal me, it would probably be Ding Ming, Xing Qi, and my little sister. Ding Ming stared at her snow-white neck. Where's your necklace? Ji Chinxue sighed helplessly. The president and the others took it away. Divine Light equipment was exclusive. Without the wearer's psychic authorization, even if the necklace was taken away, the wearer would not be able to open it, let alone use it. However, the congregations would not take away the Divine Light necklace for no reason. Ding Ming also sighed. I was wondering how you could be trapped. It turns out that without the necklace on your body, it's very difficult to recover from injuries. Ji Chinxue said, Thank goodness you're here. Ding Ming changed his words. What's Wen Yang up to now? Ji Chinxue also knew that he would definitely ask about this matter, so he had to answer. The person who kidnapped my mother was not him, but Zheng Zhantao. Ding Ming frowned. Who is this person? Tong Tian quickly explained. Zheng Zhantao from the Fengyin group. He's also an expert. Ding Ming's frown deepened. This is really getting out of hand. Even Fengyin is involved. What's he doing? Ji Chinxue said. He wants me to exchange the necklace for her. Ding Ming said, It's useless even if he takes it. Didn't your president take the necklace? Tong Tian could only explain. Mr. Ting, you don't know. Boss has returned this time, so it's reasonable for her to take over the Beidou group again. Boss is the only one left in the Ji family, but the congregations don't want her to take over. A few days ago, the president held a banquet to entertain Boss, but it was actually a trap. The experts from the 3 major sects besieged Boss, causing the situation to become like this. The president of the Hokuto Sokai was called Jin Yuanquan. In fact, Ding Ming had heard of this person before. It was rumored that his strength was not inferior to the generals of the empire, but he usually kept a low profile and did not like to show his face in public. The 3 sects under his command, Lantian, Jiuyo, and Beitai, were also filled with experts. Jin Yuanquan wants to be the president, right? Not only can he control the congregations, but he can also take over the group? Ding Ming asked. Ji Chinxue nodded. Although the group is my father's life's work, my mother's life is more important. After all, she's just an ordinary person. Ding Ming said, You agreed? Ji Chinxue said, I believe you can understand this. Ding Ming nodded. If little rascal Xinjia, Ding Wonha, and the others had been kidnapped, and the other party had asked him to exchange the divine light weapon for them, then he would have done it without hesitation. What about the marriage agreement? Ding Ming continued to ask. Tong Tian said helplessly, Boss has lost her necklace and her position as the president. She also has to ensure Annie's safety. At this time, the head of state is stepping forward to continue the marriage agreement. Anyway, President Jean said that this is a good thing for all three parties. Tong Tian's ability to express himself was not as good as Long Hui's, but Ding Ming immediately understood. Without the divine light weapon, Ji Qinshua's combat ability would be greatly reduced. If she did not succeed as the president of the group, then she would not be able to receive the protection of Beidou. Once her mother was sent back, the mother and daughter of the Ji family would be like fish on the chopping board. Moreover, Ji Qinshui was a stunning beauty. There were countless people who secretly coveted her. Ding Ming laughed coldly. Wen Yang really knows how to choose the right time to jump out at this juncture. On the surface, it looks like he's protecting you, but in reality, he's not. Tong Tian obviously did not understand the situation. He said, but if Boss becomes the president's wife, then no one will dare to touch her. Naive, Ding Ming retorted disdainfully. If a person wants to protect himself, he doesn't rely on status, but on strength. If you don't have strength, no matter how high your status is, you will fall. Wen Yang must have some dirty ideas about Ji Zong. Tong Tian did not dare to refute. He lowered his head and said, Mr. Ting is right. But if the president doesn't treat Boss well, I will be the first to not let him off. Ding Ming shook his head helplessly. Do you really think that Wen Yang likes Ji Zong? From what I know about him, he is not obsessed with beauty. I'm just afraid that he has other thoughts. Ji Qinshua's expression did not change. You don't have to worry about that. Even if he can get my body, he won't be able to get my heart. Ding Ming was not happy to hear this. He won't be able to get anything. Now that I'm here, the marriage has to be canceled. The equipment has to be returned, and the people have to be sent back safely and politely. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Tong Tian was still a little hesitant. Mr. Ting, that's the president, and there are so many experts. Ding Ming was a little annoyed. These people are so arrogant. I didn't even force Ji Zong, but they kidnapped him, stole his equipment, and forced him to marry. Do they think they're more arrogant than me? Hearing this, Tong Tian could only shut up. Ji Qinshui laughed softly. Ding Ming, you seem to dislike this marriage? Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Nonsense. Chapter 10:15. Seeing Ding Ming's impatience, Ji Qinshui was not displeased. Instead, he was happy. Tian, go out and take a look. Ding Ming and I have some private matters to discuss. Tong Tian was absolutely loyal to her. He took the initiative to leave the cabin and close the alloy door. After he left, Ding Ming said, Have you thought about it? The person who really wants the divine light necklace is probably Wen Yang himself. He took such a big detour just to use the divine light necklace. But without your permission, it's useless even if he has it. Ji Qinshui said, I've already thought about this. The so-called engagement is just a cover. He wants to trick me into giving him the necklace. I'm curious. Why would a warrior of the demons suddenly want the Star General's necklace? The answer to this question could only be explained by Wen Yang himself. However, Ding Ming said firmly, so this engagement has to be canceled. Ji Qinshui looked at him and could not help but laugh. I think this is what you really care about, right? Ahem. Ding Ming was a little embarrassed, but he did not deny it. Something like that. It's one of the reasons. No matter what, you're a warrior of the divine light necklace and the heir of the Star Mist General. I can't just stand by and watch, can I? Ji Qinshui said, I just want my mother to come back safely, no matter the cost. Ding Ming said, Don't worry. I'm here to deal with this matter. Ji Qinshui looked serious. The power of the congregations is not to be underestimated. They have become much stronger over the years. Ding Ming said proudly, Don't worry. There are not many who can really be my opponent. Ji Qinshui nodded. Leave us for a while. I don't look good. I need to change my clothes. Okay. Ding Ming also expressed his understanding. Beautiful women all had such temperaments. Even if they were bullied, they had to maintain their image. Appearance was more important than anything else. When Ji Qinxue finished changing, Ding Ming turned around and saw that Ji Qinxue had already put on a set of Steel Legion space armor. Normally, she would not dress up like this because the armor was similar to a black bodysuit, and it outlined many of her key body parts. Ding Ming could not take his eyes off of Ji Qinxue's long legs and chest. Ji Qinxue did not hesitate and generously allowed him to look as much as he wanted. "What do you think?" Ding Ming nodded slowly. Not bad." It was not clear whether he was talking about the clothes or the body. Of course, when he said that, Ding Ming's entire appearance changed. In an instant, he turned into a completely different Ji Qinxue, wearing the same black armor. It was impossible to tell that they were two different people. Ji Qinxue could not help but laugh. "Looks like you still don't know much about women." Ding Ming replied in a low, muffled voice. "Why?" Ji Qinxue said, "You've changed your appearance to look like me, but those who are more powerful will still be able to tell that you're a fake." After that, she also used the Spectre mantra and assimilation mantra. Her whole body turned into Tong Tian's image, and even her voice became like Tong Tian's. "Boss, congratulations on your recovery." Ding Ming finally understood why Ji Qinxue said that he did not know much about women. It was because he could turn into Ji Qinxue, but he would never be able to replicate Ji Qinxue's temperament, aura, and charm. For example, right now, the real Ji Qinxue walked elegantly and elegantly, but the fake Ding Ming walked like a steady middle-aged cadre. Those who had dealt with Ji Qinxue for a long time would definitely suspect that there was something wrong. "Forget it." Ding Ming turned back into his real body. "Let's go up." Ji Qinxue also turned back into his original form. "Are you sure we're going to go up like this?" Ding Ming reached out to her and said, "If you want to solve the problem as soon as possible, you'd better cut the Gordian knot. Dragging it out is not a solution." Ji Qinxue generously took his arm and said sweetly, "All right, I'll listen to you this time." When they walked out of the holding cell and saw Ji Qinxue holding Ding Ming's arm intimately, Tong Tian was a little surprised. However, he could not be envious of Ding Ming's treatment. He knew that only an expert like Mr. Ting was worthy of his goddess. So he hurriedly asked, "Boss, Mr. Ting, what do we do now?" Ji Qinxue smiled and said, "I heard that the president's wife is holding a birthday party in a few days." Tong Tian said, "Yes, I think it's today." Ji Qinxue asked, "Where's the venue?" Tong Tian said, "It's upstairs at Minghu Garden." Ding Ming said, "All right, lead the way. We'll go to Minghu Garden." Tong Tian was shocked. "Boss, isn't this a little too hasty?" Ji Qinxue smiled meaningfully. "I'm a member of the Ji family, after all. It's fine if the madam doesn't invite me to her birthday party, but I've been locked up for a while, and the so-called fiancé didn't even ask about me. Instead, the boyfriend came to escort me. What do you think?" Her tone was very tactful, and her gaze was very sly. Ding Ming could not help but laugh. "It seems that the boyfriend is more reliable, right?" Ji Qinxue smiled and said, "Then we'll have to see how the boyfriend performs." Ding Ming smiled and said, "Since you've said so, let's go and give the madam a big present now." It was already dark outside when they came out of the underground fortress. Tong Tian did not encounter any obstacles along the way. Ding Ming's assimilation art was always active, so even if someone passed by, they would not notice them. Tong Tian only stopped when they were close to Minghu Garden. He turned his head and said, "Boss, Mr. Ting, are you sure you want to go in like this?" Ji Qinxue knew what he was worried about. He smiled and said, "Ah, Tian, you should go back. Ding Ming is enough to take care of things here." Tong Tian was still a little worried. "Boss, there's a transmission array at the top of the mountain, and there's also a starship I've prepared. Let me know if anything goes wrong." Ji Qinxue nodded. "It's fine. Go ahead." Ming Lake Garden was a leisure center built by Ming Lake. There were only a few small villas in the building, and the scenery of the lake and the mountains were mostly preserved. It was a beautiful natural scenery. At this moment, night had fallen, and the lanterns had just been lit. Dozens of banquet tables had been set up by the lake, and there were quite a few guests. Everyone was eating, drinking, chatting and laughing. Ding Meng frowned and said, "This Hokuto Sokai's banquet is different from the banquets of other corporations." Ji Qinxue explained, "Congregations are different from other corporations. Other than the martial artists of the congregations, the guests will also invite people from other clans. The main purpose of the banquet is to communicate about cultivation. It's different from Zhong, Lin Fei, and Guan Xinqing's social interactions." "Understood. Let's go in," Ding Meng suggested. Jin Yuanchuan's wife was called Youngmin Su. Coincidentally, it was her 100th birthday this year, so it was normal for there to be many guests at the banquet. Most of the guests were women, and they were mainly Young Min Su's friends. Now that Jin Yuanchuan's influence had been established, and he would soon take control of the Beta group, there were still quite a few distinguished guests. Ding Meng could sense that there were a few warlord-level auras in the crowd, and, judging from their auras, they had a very deep background. They were most likely interstellar martial artists. However, when Ji Qinxue walked into the lawn with Ding Meng, the noisy crowd suddenly quieted down. This time, everyone was not surprised by Ji Qinxue's beauty, but by the fact that Ji Qinxue had entered the banquet unscathed. Although Ji Qinxue had lost his power, his reputation and prestige had taken root in many people's hearts. Therefore, many of the congregation's staff did not dare to stop them. They could only stare in shock. When they saw that Ji Qinxue and Ding Meng were walking towards the northernmost main table, someone finally jumped out and shouted, "Stop right there!" The person who blocked their way was a young man, but he looked very rough and fierce. He said coldly, "Did Madam not invite you to her banquet? What right do you have to come in? Also, you dared to break out of the congregation's dungeon. Aren't you afraid that the congregation's law will punish you?" He asked a lot of questions the moment he arrived. Ding Meng asked impatiently, "Who is this person?" Before Ji Qinxue could answer, the young man could not help but say, "You don't even know me? Deacon Xiao Long of the Hokuto Sokai's Law Enforcement Hall." "Who are you?" Ding Meng could not be bothered to answer. "Don't block the way," Xiao Long said angrily. "What do you want to do?" Ding Meng said lightly, "I'll say it again. Don't block the way." Xiao Long was annoyed. "Guards, Ji Qinxue broke out of prison without permission. Take the two of them. You really talk a lot of nonsense, and you still want to block the way." Ding Meng did not even bother to look at him. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Long suddenly flew up uncontrollably. He rolled a few times in the air and fell into the lake in the distance. This time, all the guests were so shocked that they stood up one after another. Xiao Long's strength as a deacon was not strong, but no one could see clearly what kind of technique he used. However, no one dared to stand up, because everyone knew that Ji Qinxue definitely did not appear at the banquet to congratulate them. There were a total of 8 people at the main table. At the head of the table was a beautiful and glamorous lady dressed in jewelry. She was 100 years old, but she could still maintain her appearance as if she was in her 40s or 50s. Young Min Su stood up slowly. Her expression was still calm. "Qinxue, what are you doing here?" Ji Qinxue did not answer. She only turned her head to look at Ding Meng, because the person she was relying on now was Ding Meng. Ding Meng said casually, "Congratulations." Young Min Su obviously did not understand. "What are you congratulating me for?" Ding Meng said, "Congratulations on meeting me. I'm very easy to talk to." Young Min Su frowned and said, "I haven't asked for your name yet." It was normal that the people here did not know Ding Meng. Their strength and level had not reached that level, so they did not have access to the information of the top circle. However, seeing Ji Qinxue holding a man's hand so intimately for the first time, everyone was curious. Ding Meng did not waste time with her. "Give it to me." Young Min Su was stunned. "Give what?" Ding Meng said, "The necklace." Young Min Su's face darkened. "What necklace?" Ding Meng said, "I don't care if you really don't know or not. I don't care who has the necklace. If I want the necklace, you have to give it to me. If you can't give it to me, then give me your life. If many people die, the necklace will naturally appear." Everyone was in an uproar. "Aren't you being too overbearing?" Young Min Su's expression did not change. "Friend, are you still asleep? Do you know where you are?" Ding Meng's face also darkened. "I'll count to 3. If I don't see the necklace, someone will pay for it. You won't be an exception. How dare you? How dare you? An old man in a suit stood up immediately. His face was full of anger. Who do you think you are? How dare you make trouble at little Zhang's party? Ding Ming did not even have the interest to know the person's name. He said impatiently, "Come if you're not afraid of death." Chapter 10:16. Since the old man addressed young Min Su as Little Zhang, his status must be quite high as well. Ji Chenxue had already established a telepathic link with Ding Ming. "This is Elder Lin Kong of the congregations." Ding Ming asked, "Did he do anything to you before?" Ji Chenxue said, "He's not strong enough yet." Ding Ming said, "Fine, I'll spare his life." Lin Kong did not waste any more time. He suddenly struck out with his palm across the table, and a column of wind, which he had precisely controlled, swept towards Ding Ming's lower abdomen. His intention was simple. He wanted to injure Ding Ming's lower body and force him to kneel and beg for mercy. Unexpectedly, Ding Ming did not even move. He allowed the orange column of wind to enter his body. He could not help but sneer. "How dare you attack me with this level of strength? Your courage is commendable." Lin Kang's face was filled with shock and doubt. He had clearly hit Ding Ming, so why was Ding Ming unharmed? Ding Ming's gaze fell on a set of tableware on the table. A white plate suddenly bounced up and smashed into Lin Kang's head with a bang, shattering into pieces. Lin Kang's body swayed, and then he fell to the ground. The people around him panicked. Elder Lin, you can't even withstand a single blow." Ding Ming turned his head disdainfully. "My patience is limited. It's your turn." Young Min Su was shocked. Lin Kong, a battle saint, had actually been knocked over by a plate. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would not have believed it. Ding Ming was just about to step forward when a dignified voice suddenly came from behind him. "Are people so bold these days? How dare you come to the forbidden area of Hokuto Sokai and cause trouble? Are you tired of living?" Ding Ming turned around and saw a middle-aged, bearded man in luxurious clothes leading a group of people arrogantly walking in from a main entrance. Ji Chenxue explained, "He's the elder of the Lantian sect, Blue Infinity." Ding Ming said, "Still the same old question. Has he ever been involved in dealing with you?" Ji Chenxue shook his head and said, "Thank goodness you didn't." Ding Ming said, "Fine, let him live." Blue Infinity slowly walked halfway before speaking. "Ji Chenxue, you actually have the guts to sneak out of the dungeon and bring a wild man here. Is this your attitude towards Madam?" Ji Chenxue maintained his composure. "Elder Blue, do you have any good ideas?" Blue Infinity shook his head and said, "No, I don't have any good ideas. I just think that an unrelated person can leave this place. Also, you must be punished by the law of congregations." Ding Ming suddenly laughed. "I'm very curious about the punishment of congregations." Blue Infinity was followed by a beautiful woman with heavy makeup. This woman looked very erotic and gave people a very uncomfortable feeling. Moreover, she spoke in a strange tone. Breaking out of prison without permission is an additional crime. Bosses like Ji Zong who lead by example should be punished even more severely. It's best to strip him naked and hang him up as an example. When she spoke, her eyes were full of resentment. It was obvious that she hated Ji Chenxue very much. Ding Ming was a little puzzled. However, from Ji Chenxue's telepathic thoughts, he quickly understood that this was Blue Infinity's third concubine. She used to be in the entertainment industry and thought that she could make a name for herself in the Beta group by hooking up with Blue Infinity. However, as the group's president, Ji Chenxue directly rejected her. The Beta group could not make this kind of woman a star. Ding Ming laughed and said, "A despicable woman can actually define the law of congregations. Should she be hung up as an example?" As his voice fell, the dress on the woman's body suddenly tore apart automatically. Even the interior was torn into pieces by his psychokinesis. Her naked body was directly lifted into the air. For a moment, it was extremely dazzling. All the men present stared at her body carefully, afraid that they would miss out on any part of her body. Ding Ming laughed loudly. "Very good. You made a very formal demonstration. He didn't wait for the woman to scream and directly threw her into the lake. "You gone too far." Blue Infinity was furious. Although he didn't pay much attention to this third concubine, this kind of humiliation was something that any man couldn't stand. Blue Infinity took a step forward and slapped Ding Meng's temples with his palms. There was even a light blue coating on the back of his hands. This guy was much stronger than the previous young man and Lin Kong. He was at least a beginner-level warlord. However, a warlord-level warlord was still nothing in front of Ding Meng. Although Blue Infinity could see that the opponent practiced telekinesis, he still flew over. He was confident in his dual cultivation of heat and ice. However, his confidence collapsed after 2 seconds because even he didn't know what happened. His vision suddenly blurred, and his palms uncontrollably turned into a pair of crossed wrists. Both of his wrists were easily grabbed by Ding Meng. It was as if he was locked in a steel alloy cage. Even the origin of his body was frozen. Blue Infinity looked up in shock. "You." Ding Meng laughed very happily. "That's right. I've gone too far." After saying that, he waved his hand and Blue Infinity flew into the lake to take a cold bath with his concubine. At this moment, no one dared to move or speak. The sex warlord Doyen could not even last one move. This young man was terrifyingly powerful. It was no wonder that Ji Chenxue was so close to him. He was a big shot. Ding Meng turned to Young Minsu again. "No more helpers, right? It's your turn now." Young Minsu said in a low voice, "I'm definitely not your opponent, but the necklace you want is not in my hands." Ding Meng said, "Okay, then it seems that there's no point in keeping you alive. Don't you dare." Young Minsu raised her eyebrows. "You should know who I am." Ding Meng sneered and said, "You don't have the strength, but you still dare to say such words." Young Minsu said angrily, "If you dare to touch a hair of mine, the president will not let you off easily." Ding Meng was too lazy to talk nonsense. Suddenly, his eyes turned cold. Young Minsu suddenly screamed and then fell on her back. All the guests were frightened because Young Minsu's left hand had been cut off at the wrist, as if it had been cut by an invisible sharp blade. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Ding Meng said, "Repeat what you just said." Young Minsu fell to the ground and almost fainted from the pain. Fortunately, she was supported by a few of her close friends. She really did not expect that Ding Meng would dare to kill her. She roared angrily, "You broke my hand. My husband will definitely break your limbs and feed you to the dogs. Just you wait, you dog." Ding Meng snorted coldly and swept her gaze across the crowd. The few upper-class ladies who were supporting Ji Chenxue were sent flying. Ding Meng released her grip on Ji Chenxue and walked slowly to her. She squatted down in front of her and said meaningfully, "There are many people who are unconvinced by me, and they usually end up in a miserable state. It seems like you want to give it a try?" "Bah." Young Minsu was in so much pain that she could not even muster any energy. She could only spit on Ding Meng's face. Ding Meng was not angry. He slowly stretched out his index finger, and a thin and straight white flame suddenly spurted out from his fingertip like a sharp knife. "What are you trying to do?" Young Minsu realized that something was wrong. Ding Meng smiled and said, "Since it's your 100th birthday, I'll give you a big gift." He gently cut down with his index finger, and Young Minsu, who was lying on the ground, immediately let out a shrill scream. The sound echoed in the night sky and could be heard clearly by the entire Minghu area. It was said that the 10 fingers were connected to the heart, and the pain was really terrible. Ding Meng directly cut off Young Minsu's right little finger. The crowd was in a complete mess. Many people's first reaction was to turn around and run, but more people turned on their wristbands and connected to the communication device. Ding Meng smiled and said, "My patience is limited. I'll cut off one of your fingers every minute. If your fingers are gone, I'll cut off your toes. If your toes are gone and I don't see the necklace, you can only blame your husband for not caring about you." Young Minsu still had some confidence before, but now she was really scared. The person in front of her was definitely a man of his words. "Chenxue." Young Minsu looked at Ji Chenxue with difficulty and said, "I don't have that much of a grudge against you, do I? Ji Chinxue had already sat down at the dining table. He replied calmly, "Indeed, but when I was set up by you, you didn't plead for me, did you? By the way, Sister Xiao, this is my boyfriend. He has always had a bad temper. Even I don't dare to provoke him. It's better for a woman to listen to a man obediently." Young Minsu was in despair when she heard this. Ji Chinxue usually looked like an elegant aristocrat, but Young Minsu also knew that Ji Chinxue was not a soft-hearted person to be able to manage such a big business like the Beidou Group. He must have a decisive side to him. Ji Chinxue's current boyfriend was Ji Chinxue's spokesperson. At this moment, there was a commotion at the entrance of the banquet. The crowd spontaneously opened up a path, and another group of dignified people walked in. The three leaders at the front had extraordinary auras. It was obvious that they were the managers. Two of them were middle-aged men, and the remaining one was a skinny old man. Ji Chinxue explained again. The leaders of the Lantian, Jiuyou, and Beidai families are respectively Dulan, Zhang Ping, and Tenda Music. This Tenda Music is the most despicable. You were seriously injured by the three of them? Ding Ming had already sensed that the aura of these three people was exactly the same as Ji Chinxue's trapped body of origin. Ji Chinxue did not look too good. If I hadn't been careless, they wouldn't have been able to hurt me. At this moment, Ding Ming received a new telepathic thought message. He roughly understood the cause and process of the incident. Ji Chinxue and Jin Yuanquan were on good terms. They were not friends, but they were not enemies either. After all, the group and the congregations were in charge of their own affairs. They restricted and supported each other. Jin Yuanquan and his wife invited Ji Chinxue to a banquet to discuss succession matters. However, during the banquet, they took advantage of the situation and attacked Ji Chinxue when he was unprepared. That was why Ji Chinxue suffered great loss. In the end, his necklace was snatched away and he was imprisoned. Among them, the skinny old man was Tenda Music. He was 200 years old and had no other hobbies. His favorite hobby was to harm women from good families. Because Ji Chinxue had never been in contact with the opposite sex, Tenda Music had long wanted to lay his hands on her. In the past, due to the congregations of the group, he did not have the guts to do so. However, now that Ji Chinxue was seriously injured and captured, if not for Jin Yuanquan's concerns, Ji Chinxue would have been ravaged by this old man in the dungeon, Ding Meng sneered. If that's the case, there's no need to keep these culprits alive. Ji Chinxue's tone was uncharacteristically tough. That's right. Since I can't deal with them, I'll leave it to you to vent my anger for me. Chapter 10:17. The birthday banquet was still going on, but no one dared to sit still in their seats. Almost everyone was crowded at the entrance. On the other side, only Ding Meng and Li Muchio were sitting at the northern head table. As soon as he saw Ji Chinxue, Dylan went up to him with a smile. Ji Chinxue, why didn't you stay in your cell? Why did you have to come out here looking for trouble? Zhang Ping, who was next to him, immediately echoed, Yeah, we've worked together for so many years, and we've always been polite to each other. That's why we didn't do anything to you. It's a little against the rules for you to sneak out like this, isn't it? The skinny old man, Tenda Music's gaze was fixed on Ji Chinxue's round chest. The covetous look in his eyes could not be concealed. Back then, old Jin insisted on being biased. I told him that it would be best to let me handle it once and for all. In the end, you guys refused to listen. Great, now it's like this. Everyone understood what he meant. Now that there were three people floating in the lake, Young Min-Su was moaning in a pool of blood, and Ji Chinxue was sitting perfectly fine. Hokuto Sokai could no longer care about their old friendship. This time, they would definitely fall out with him. Zhang Ping glanced sideways at Tenda Music. Does God mean that you're going to deal with this trouble? Tenda Music sighed. I'd like to deal with it, but I'll have to get the second master and third master's approval, right? Dylan immediately said, I'm fine with it. Zhang Ping said, if old Du is fine with it, then I'm definitely fine with it too. Tenda Music's eyes flashed. Are you giving me the person so I can do whatever I want with him? This question was asked rather tactfully, but everyone understood that even though old Master Tian was old, his interest in that aspect was still very strong. A beauty like Ji Chinxue, any man would want to share a bed with her. However, everyone knew that the boyfriend by Ji Chinxue's side was not a good person either. He could even beat up Blue Infinity, so it was best not to mess around. Otherwise, not only would they not be able to share a bed with her, they would also be beaten up until their teeth fell out. Ji Chinxue listened coldly to this group of people talking over there and replied disdainfully, "Tian, you used to come to me with the company's stars, and I turned a blind eye to it. I really didn't expect you to be so bold as to have ideas about me." Tenda Music laughed. "Xiao Ji, you're inexperienced, so you don't understand. Some things are wonderful beyond words. I'm an authoritative expert in this area. You'll definitely have an endless aftertaste after tasting it once." Ji Chinxue couldn't help but retch. "I feel like vomiting." Ding Ming got up and patted her back gently, motioning for her to sit still. "I don't care what you're talking about. I only have 2 requests. First, hand over the necklace. Second, send Old Lady G back in one piece. Otherwise, Mrs. Jean will be in trouble," Ding Ming said unhurriedly. Tenda Music smiled sinisterly. "Boy, I don't care what your relationship with Ji Chinxue is, but I have something to say to you. Tonight, even if the Emperor comes, no one can save her." Ding Ming's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You're really confident. I didn't hit you hard today because you're Ji Zong's former subordinates. Since you don't even care about your dignity, it seems that I'll have to eat meat today," Tenda Music said coldly. "Ignorant boy, what an arrogant tone. Even the Empire's generals don't dare to talk to me like this. You're really tired of living." He looked like he was about to make a move, but a burly man with a full beard next to him laughed sinisterly. "Master, you don't need to personally exercise your muscles and bones to deal with this kind of ignorant brat. I'll take care of him for you." Tenda Music chuckled. "That's fine too." The bearded man revealed a lewd smile again. "But master, I have a small request." Tenda Music said, "Speak." The bearded man's gaze also turned to Ji Chinxue with the same lewd look in his eyes. "Master, if you're going to enjoy her, can you let your disciple have a taste of the soup too?" Tenda Music laughed. "I thought it was a big deal. Xiaolong, little tiger, take down this boy for me and bring little Ji here. Tonight, everyone will have a share. Everyone can have fun once." The bearded man named Xiaolong and the other fierce-looking man's eyes immediately lit up. They stared at Ding Ming and Little Tiger like hungry wolves who saw a flock of sheep. Ding Ming sighed and shook his head. "Wrong, you're all wrong. Your master is sending you on your way. How dare you?" Xiaolong immediately flew out and swept in a straight line towards Ding Ming. He directly displayed a powerful aura as he flew. All the tables were shattered into dust by an invisible force. The surrounding grass, trees, and gravel soared into the sky. Many people at the gate only felt a faint pain on their faces. Obviously, it was caused by Xiaolong's aura. To be honest, if it were 3 years ago, Ding Ming would also be surprised because the strength displayed by Xiaolong was between the god of war and the interstellar martial artist. He was already an interstellar martial artist. However, Ding Ming laughed. "You're so manic that you can't even control your aura. How dare you have any ideas about Ji Zong?" As he spoke, Xiaolong had already swept in front of Ding Ming. It seemed that he had both palms out, but in fact, he was playing a little trick. He twisted his waist, jumped horizontally, and flew up to sweep Ding Ming's temple. There was a purple pupil attached to his boots. This move was not only fast, but also very powerful. Almost everyone thought that Ding Ming would have to block, but Ding Ming only stretched out his palm and gently cut Xiaolong's hip joint. With a crisp crack, all the whistling and fierce momentum disappeared. Xiaolong swept over like a divine dragon, swinging its tail, but now he fell to the ground like a dead dog. He couldn't even make a sound. Ding Ming's knife was not fast, but Xiaolong couldn't dodge it. Everyone could see that his entire right leg was twisted 90 degrees from the hip joint. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Xiaolong was crippled. He curled up into a ball on the grass. "Huh." Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh. "I'm giving you face. Normally, I wouldn't even bother to deal with a piece of scrap metal like you. Mother asterisk her. The burly man, named Little Tiger beside the Tendu, music roared. "You hurt my brother. You must die." Before he finished speaking, Little Tiger had already rushed out of the crowd and pounced on him like a Real tiger. At this moment, Ding Meng's figure suddenly flashed to the center of the field like a ghost. Before Little Tiger could make a move, Ding Meng's elbow had already intercepted him halfway. There was a muffled thud. It was a painful sound. The people on the congregation side could clearly see that Ding Meng's elbow had hit Little Tiger's forehead. A large part of his forehead caved in and his entire head was deformed. It was as if Little Tiger had voluntarily offered his forehead to Ding Meng. With a plop, Little Tiger also fell to the ground softly. This time, the crowd became restless again and exclaimed. God's dragon and tiger ghosts were interstellar warriors, but they couldn't even make a move in front of Ji Qinshue's boyfriend. Dulin and Zheng Ping couldn't help but exchange glances. This person is also an interstellar warrior. Has he reached the level of an advanced warrior? Tenda Music's face darkened. Of course, he could see that Ding Meng was strong, but what he couldn't see was Ding Meng's true strength. Up until now, Ding Meng had not revealed any aura at all. "Kid, you asked for it." Tian Do Lu clenched his teeth and suddenly soared into the air. With a clang, he conjured up a dark blue frost shield. At the same time, he pulled with his palms, and a bright and straight five-colored ice sword quickly took shape. Tenda Music activated his origin ability, and a thin layer of ice formed over the entire banquet hall, including the water surface. The surrounding temperature suddenly dropped, and the people on the congregation side who were slightly weaker felt the air become cold and had difficulty breathing. Ding Meng turned his head and said, "He's the one who hurt you, right?" Ji Qinshu nodded and said, "He had a chance if I ambushed him, but he had no chance at all if I faced him head-on." Ding Meng also nodded. This Tenda Music was actually a pure Ice-type origin ability user with an index of around 200 billion points. To be honest, being able to cultivate to this level was already the limit of an origin ability user. This old guy must have eaten a lot of amplifiers, treasures of heaven and earth, as well as rare supplements to be able to break through and become an intermediate advanced warrior. Thinking about it, Ji Qinshu's chances of winning were indeed very low if he was ambushed by these three people when he was unprepared. However, it was a pity that the person Tenda Music was facing today was not Ji Qinshu. The five-colored ice sword rapidly expanded and instantly became 10 meters long and as thick as a tree. It pressed straight down from above. Even Ding Meng couldn't help but sigh and say, "It's rare for someone to be able to cultivate the power of dark ice to this extent. No wonder you're so arrogant." Ding Meng suddenly raised his hand, and the thick and sharp tip of the sword collided with Ding Meng's palm with a ding sound. This scene once again shocked everyone present. Ding Meng was neither frozen by the ice sword nor crushed into meat paste. Instead, he steadily caught the power of dark ice. How is this possible? Tenda Music was also shocked. In his impression, only President Jean could catch this move of his. Last time, Ji Qinshu barely managed to catch it, and the consequences were needless to say. If it was light, his whole body would be swollen from frostbite, and if it was heavy, his origin would be imprisoned within his body. However, it seemed that Ding Meng's expression was as if he had caught a paper airplane. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another series of rapid sounds came from above. Tenda Music's palms once again exerted force, and a five-colored cold mist poured into the hilt of the ice sword like flowing water. For a moment, the luster of the ice sword seemed to have become much brighter, and the light seemed to have solidified. It was definitely the injection of a pure energy. Even if it couldn't chop Ding Meng to death, it would still completely freeze him. Ding Meng indeed felt it, and his palms were slightly cold. This proved that his opponent's basic skills were indeed solid. What made him feel strange was that this ice energy was different. It actually had a faint suction force, just like a magnet. It couldn't pierce through, but it couldn't be easily shaken off either. While he was still in shock, Du Long and Tseng Ping were no longer in their original positions. The two of them each pulled out a series of afterimages, one from the left and one from the right. attacking him from both sides. Dylan, who was halfway through his charge, threw a series of punches across the air. 5 bright, white warhammers appeared in the air. The speed, direction, size, and energy of the 5 warhammers were all different, and they vaguely resembled a large net. They were actually pure heat energy. Zheng Ping, on the other hand, was a lightspeed assassin. He seemed to be floating toward Ding Ming, but in fact he was pouncing toward Ji Qinxue with his claws wide open. His goal was quite clever. The 3 of them had been working together for a long time, and they already knew that they couldn't defeat Ding Ming in a one-on-one fight. Therefore, the 3 of them teamed up again. Tenda Music would hold Ding Ming back, while Dylan would attack from the front. Zheng Ping would capture Ji Qinxue. This way, even if they couldn't injure Ding Ming, they could still capture Ji Qinxue and make Ding Ming hesitate to attack Ji Qinxue. These adaptations and strategies were all good, but Ding Ming's eyes emitted a cold light. You guys are courting death. Chapter 10:18. Facing the combined attacks of 3 martial artists. Even if Ding Ming didn't want to, he still had to revolve his origin. Du Long, who was rushing forward, suddenly felt an incomparably thick aura rush towards him. This aura was like a giant wall, not only suppressing him to the point of suffocation, but even his vision was slightly distorted. When he opened his eyes again, he saw 3 clones of Ding Ming in front of him. 2 of them stood in front of Ding Ming, trying to block his warhammer, while the other one stood in front of Ji Qinxue to protect her. Dylan thought that these were the afterimages of the Light Speed series, so he did not think much of it. Unexpectedly, the 2 clones jumped up at the same time and used Ding Ming's most classic hand chop. The 2 clones were clearly hit by the warhammer, but they did not disappear. It was as if the real Ding Ming had taken 5 heavy blows, and their momentum was not slow at all. Could it be that these were not afterimages? By the time Dylan realized the problem, it was already too late. The 2 clones of Ding Ming had arrived. One hand chop accurately hit his temple, while the other hand chop on his right wrist. These 2 chop were quite precise. First, Dylan felt that his head had been hit by an earth-shattering blow, and his consciousness was blurred. The chop on his wrist basically meant that he could not fight back. Ding Ming had seen through his trick the moment he made his move, and Ding Ming had directly strangled his strongest punch. When Dylan fell down, he could see clearly from the corner of his eye that Ji Qinxue was not hurt at all. Ding Ming's clone in front of her had sent Zheng Ping flying with a kick. Zheng Ping's body made a crackling sound like firecrackers, and his bones were probably all broken. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Ding Ming quickly called back the clones with serene lotus steps, and the 4 of them merged back into one. At this time, Ding Ming was still holding the 5-colored eye sword that was piercing down from above. He looked up coldly at Tenda Music, who was constantly injecting energy into the sword. Hand over the necklace, or even the heavens won't be able to save you today. Tenda Music was furious. In your dreams, you're still stubborn. Ding Ming's palm slightly exerted force, and the 5-colored eye sword's luster suddenly changed. A fiery red origin energy spread from the tip of the sword to the hilt. It felt like bright red-hot lava was corroding the dry ground. Not good. Tiandu Li's expression changed. The other party was deliberately using extremely high temperatures to melt his dark ice powers. To be honest, he was also an expert who had experienced countless battles. At this level, it was impossible for a warrior to kill the other party without using a powerful move. However, it was rare for someone to use such a simple and crude method like Ding Ming's. To melt the dark ice powers of an interstellar warrior, how high of a temperature did one have to use in order to do so? Tenda Music was still preparing to inject energy into the sword, but who would have thought that the ice sword would be completely engulfed by the heat and turn into a flaming sword? Moreover, the entire sword was pushed up. Due to the strong absorption ability of the sword itself, Tenda Music could not get rid of it even if he wanted to. This was his ultimate move, but in the end, it was used by his opponent. The hilt of the flaming sword quickly rose into the air and collided with Tenda Music's crotch. There was a loud boom in the air, and countless sparks flew in all directions. The ice on the lake melted immediately, and the surrounding air warmed up again. Ding Ming had grasped the strength of his attack perfectly. However, Tinda Music let out a shrill cry and fell heavily from the air. The leaders of the three major sects were now all curled up on the grass. Among them, Tinda Music's wail was the loudest. He actually let out a shrill cry like a woman. The other disciples of the sects were all dumbfounded. The three leaders were as fragile as paper in front of Ding Ming. Ah! Tinda Music screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He covered his crotch tightly. You? What did you do to me? Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Cut it off. It's all burnt. Hearing this, Ji Qinshue's face revealed a trace of a smile. He felt an indescribable relief in his heart. Tinda Music was the most abominable person, and now he had received the punishment he deserved. In the underworld, what men cared about the most was 2 ounces in the crotch, and what women cared about the 4 ounces in the chest. Now that it was gone, what was the point of doing well in the future? Tinda Music took a deep breath and forcefully channeled his origin energy. He stared at Ding Ming with a ferocious expression and looked like he was going to pounce on him again. I'll fight you to the death. Stop! Another shout came from the door. Ding Ming raised her head and saw another 2 men in suits walking in with imposing appearances. Ji Qinshue's telepathic thoughts came from behind him. Zheng Zhantao from Fengyin Group and their boss, Zheng Long. It turned out that the main characters were here. Ding Ming sensed that these 2 guys were about the same strength as the 3 leaders lying on the ground. Ji Qinshu put away his smile and slowly got up. His tone was much gentler. Chief Zheng, Beidou, and Fengyin Group have always minded our own business. Why don't you hand him over? Zheng Long looked a little old, and his expression was slightly aged. Ji Qinshu, you're no longer the boss of Beidou. I know. Ji Qinshu lowered his stance. Chief Zheng, your mother is also an ordinary person. 8 years ago, I also prepared a small gift for her birthday, even if not for the sake of the monk, but for the sake of the Buddha. If things go too far, it won't do anyone any good. Zheng Long did not answer, but Zheng Zhantao next to him sneered. Ji Qinshu, you should thank Chief Zheng for being able to live until now. If it weren't for Chief Zheng's intercession, Boss Jean wouldn't have decided to lock you in the dungeon. Otherwise, you wouldn't have lived until now. You would have been toyed to death by the men around you. Ji Qinshue's expression did not change. You kidnapped my mother, and I still have to thank you? Zheng Zhantao laughed. Do you really think that just because head of state Wen Yang married you and made you his wife, no one would dare to touch you? Ji Qinshu said, looks like Ding Ming wasn't spouting nonsense. You're all in Wen Yang's group. The dignified Fengyin Group actually sided with the head of state. Zheng Long said in a low voice, Fengyin Group was originally going to merge with Beidou. There's no such thing as being in a group. It's not a bad thing the head of state Wen Yang is in charge. Anyway, you're no longer in charge of Beidou. Isn't it good to wait patiently for your punishment? At least the head of state is willing to marry you and at least guarantee your safety. You even came to the birthday banquet to cause trouble. I don't think anyone can protect you. Ding Ming was impatient. Cut the crap. Hand her over. Otherwise, you'll end up like these people on the ground. The 5 or 6 people lying on the ground were all seriously injured. The 3 leaders were moaning nonstop. They looked like they were in great pain. Zheng Long was secretly shocked, but he did not care. With head of state Wen Yang backing him, a small Ji Qinshu could not do anything to him. Zheng Zhantao laughed sinisterly again. If you want her, we can talk about it. Men, bring old lady Ji up here. He said bring instead of invite. Ding Ming and Ding Ming felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, a strong man behind the crowd carried a huge white cloth bag up and slammed it heavily into the center of the hall. Ji Qinshu was about to step forward when Ding Ming suddenly waved his hand. The cloth bag was sucked to Ji Qinshue's feet. Ji Qinshu did not open the cloth bag. She suddenly raised her head. There was an indescribable anger in her eyes. You? And not only was her voice trembling, but even her teeth were chattering. Even her body was trembling slightly. Although the cloth bag was not opened, Ji Chinxue could easily sense that there was an old woman in the cloth bag. Ji Chinxue also confirmed that this was his mother. However, old Lady Ji had long lost her vitality. She had been dead for a long time. It was the kind of situation where even the gods could not save her. In Ding Meng's telekinesis vision, old Lady Ji was already very old. When she was tied up, 2 of her ribs were broken. One of the broken ribs had pierced through her liver. If he guessed correctly, not only did the old lady not receive any medical treatment, she did not even receive any food. Due to her severe injuries and hunger, the old lady had already shriveled up into a ball. Ding Meng had seen many dead people like this in the world of ice and snow in the Wei Dynasty. They were ordinary people who had truly starved to death. Because they had not been able to eat for a long time, their internal organs had begun to fail. In addition, the stomach had the ability to digest and absorb food. In the end, all the organs in the chest cavity would be glued together. A person's body would shrink a lot. Old Lady Ji's situation was not only like this. Due to the worsening of her wounds, her corpse had already turned black and smelly. The bag was not opened because her death was too horrible to look at. It was completely a pile of rotten flesh. It was obvious that she had been dead for too long. Moreover, the other party did not intend to let her live in the first place. With a bang, Ji Chinxue's entire body ignited with an invisible origin flame. At this moment, her devastatingly beautiful face was actually faintly ferocious. It was enough to show the monstrous anger in her heart. Ding Meng was also extremely angry. All this time, his strength had been constantly rising. However, he still had a sense of propriety in his actions. If he could avoid harming the innocent, he would try his best not to harm them, let alone ordinary citizens. As for things like starving people to death, it was even more impossible for him to do it. He really did not expect Wen Yang's forces to be so deranged. Ding Meng pressed Ji Chinxue's shoulder and pulled her back. Ji Chinxue's eyes were almost bloodshot now. It was obvious that she was both sad and angry. Ding Meng pulled her back and said seriously, "Take the old lady's body to the back. Whether it's a burial or cremation, let the old lady's soul rest in peace." With her back facing the enemy and Ding Meng, Ji Chinxue's eyes were almost filled with tears. She had a very deep relationship with her mother, especially after she took over the Beta group. No matter how busy she was every day, as long as she had the time, she would return to her mother's side to accompany her. She had never expected that her mother would die in such a tragic way. Ding Meng obviously felt her emotions. He said in a deep voice, "Go, leave this to me. I will definitely seek justice for the old lady. They must have something to rely on if they dare to be so deranged. Today, I will uproot these people. Believe me." Ji Chinxue's temperament had always been relatively gentle. At this moment, she could not help but gnash her teeth and say, "Don't let these people die so easily. Leave them alive so that I can cut them into pieces." As she said this, she transmitted a divine thought to Ding Meng. Most of it was fragments of memories between her and her mother. Ding Meng immediately felt Ji Chinxue's strong killing intent. Today's matter could not be settled peacefully. Chapter 1019. The night was tranquil, so tranquil that it made people's hearts palpitate. Seeing Ji Chinxue grab the sack and leave, many people present could tell that this was the calm before the storm. Ding Meng slowly turned around and looked at Zheng Long and Jin Qingyan expressionlessly. Zheng Zhantao was still laughing. "I've already returned her to you. Do you have anything else to say, kid?" Ding Meng gently reached out his hand, and Youngmin Su, who was lying in a pool of blood beside him, was immediately sucked into his palm as if he had caught a dying fish. "Who has the necklace?" Youngmin Su had already seen Ding Meng's tyrannical strength, so she had no choice but to tell the truth. Most importantly, being honest was very dangerous. I don't know." Ding Meng's line of thought was reasonable. No one present had heard of him before, and Youngmin Su was the only one present who was of a higher status. After all, she was Jin Yuanchuan's wife, so she should more or less know some inside information. However, since she was still saying that she didn't know, it probably meant that she really didn't know. Very well, I'll let you live for a while longer. Let your husband come and collect your corpse. Ding Ming let go of her. Zheng Zhantao was still laughing. Kid, you've got guts. How dare you make a scene at Mrs. Jin's birthday party? Don't you think you owe us an explanation? Ding Ming nodded expressionlessly. Okay, I'll give you an explanation now. As soon as he finished speaking, Ding Ming's figure became slightly blurry, just like the camera pausing for a moment in a movie. Zhenglong felt a gust of cold wind blowing past him. When he turned around, Zheng Zhantao had already disappeared. When he raised his head again, he was shocked to find that Zheng Zhantao was already in front of Ding Ming. However, Zheng Zhantao did not dodge. Instead, he was captured by Ding Ming. What a freaking speed! Zheng Zhantao was indeed standing in front of Ding Ming, but he realized that the origin in his body could not operate at all. It was as if it had been imprisoned by a mysterious power. Clearly, this power came from Ding Ming. I heard that you were the one who kidnapped old lady Ji? Ding Ming asked expressionlessly. Zheng Zhantao already had a bad feeling. No, it's... Ding Ming immediately interrupted him. It doesn't matter if it's the same or not. This debt is still on you. Don't worry, I won't kill you. You. As he spoke, he walked forward and reached out to gently tap Zheng Zhantao's chest. Even from such a distance, Zheng Long could hear cracking sounds coming from inside Zheng Zhantao's body. It was obvious that Zheng Zhantao's bones were broken. Ding Ming patted Zheng Zhantao's chest again. The sound of broken bones piercing into his organs could be heard clearly. I'll deal with you the same way you dealt with old lady Ji. Stop! This time, two voices rang out at the same time. Other than Zheng Long's angry roar, there was also a man's voice. However, this man's voice was obviously shocked. There were still people coming in from the entrance. Both of them were very tall, taller than 185 centimeters. The middle-aged man in a suit leading them was Jin Yuanquan from Hokuto Sokai. With such a big thing happening at the birthday banquet, he could not sit idly by and watch. Therefore, he immediately rushed over here. To Ding Ming's surprise, Jin Yuanquan was accompanied by an old man in a military uniform. The military rank on his chest showed that he was a 3-star general of the empire. It was reasonable that the people from before did not know Ding Ming. However, as the president of the congregations, it was impossible that Jin Yuanquan did not know him. Jin Yuanquan cupped his hands as he walked. Mr. Ting, we are honored by your presence. Please forgive me for not being able to welcome you personally. Zheng Long looked at Jin Yuanquan in surprise. Jin Yuanquan had interacted with the Hokuto Sokai quite a bit. He knew that Jin Yuanquan was calm and experienced when dealing with matters. His attitude was exactly the same as when he was meeting the head of state. Mr. Ting, Zheng Long was curious. Old Jin Yuanquan's expression was serious. Yes, the famous Mr. Ding Ming from the Holy Grail Federation. He is known as the God of War Ding Ming. The God of War Ding Ming. Zheng Long had a meaningful expression on his face. Anyone who was famous in this place would be at the level of a god of war. So what if Ding Ming was a god of war? Of course, he was not stupid enough to think that Ding Ming was only at the level of a god of war. The people lying on the ground in front of him had all been taken care of by Ding Ming in one move. The 3-star general also explained, God of War means that he is invincible and undefeatable. Mr. Ting has never lost a single battle since his debut. Zheng Long was shocked. Never lost a single battle? The general nodded and said, yes. This was a general of the empire's military, so his words were basically authoritative. From another perspective, having never lost a single battle meant that he was invincible. Of course, invincibility also depended on who he was facing. Therefore, Zheng Long was still a little doubtful. Old Jin, Ding Ming, and Ji Qinxue are causing trouble at the birthday banquet. Jin Yuanquan already knew about causing trouble at the birthday banquet. There were so many members of the congregations present at the banquet, so someone had already tipped him off. However, the trouble wasn't causing trouble. At this moment, Jin Yuanquan was stunned. Ji Qinxue was here? Zheng Long nodded and said, It looks like he's going to the back garden to dispose of the old lady's body. Jin Yuan's heart sank. You've handed her over? Actually, there was no need to ask this question. Just by looking at how Zheng Zhantao was being stepped on by Ding Ming, he could roughly guess what was going on. Zheng Long and Zheng Zhantao must have been fearless. They must have thought that Ji Qinxue was powerless to retaliate. So what if they threw the body out? Jin Yuanquan cupped his hands at Ding Ming again. Mr. Ting and Ji Zong are from the same sect, right? It was rare for him to make such a judgment. At least he knew some information about Xinguang biotechnology. By asking this question, he was also testing the relationship between Ding Ming and Ji Qinxue. However, Ding Ming wasn't going to be polite with him. He asked calmly, "Where's the necklace?" Jin Yuanquan said, "Sorry, the necklace isn't with me." Ding Ming said, "Who has it?" Jin Yuanquan immediately shut his mouth. Just because he didn't want to say it didn't mean that Ding Ming didn't know. The Xinguang necklace was most likely with Wenyang. Wenyang didn't even want the Xinguang cloak back then, but now he was so concerned about the Xinguang necklace. Could it be that the necklace had other uses for it? Ding Ming looked coldly at Jin Yuanquan. "If the necklace was with you and you gave it to me, I could have considered letting you off lightly. But unfortunately, since you've handed it over, none of you here today can escape." Zheng Long couldn't help but say angrily, "How arrogant of you. Old General Cheng is here, and you still dare to be so impudent?" Ding Ming had actually met this old General Cheng Ming once before on Rainforest Planet 1. However, he had been sent by Wan Yang to escort Zhong Yalan back then. General Ding Ming also had an impression of him, but it was only after he heard about the incident at the temple that he realized that Ding Ming was a great enemy of Chancellor Wan Yang. Jin Yuanquan quickly cupped his hands. "Mr. Ting, I, Beidou, have no enmity with you. You've injured so many people, including Min Xiu. Can we just stop here?" He was in a good mood and took the initiative to show weakness. Ding Ming said, "I've already said that there's still room for negotiation if you hand over the necklace. If you don't hand it over, then there's nothing to talk about." Zheng Long was furious. "The necklace isn't yours." Ding Ming laughed. "Who told you that the necklace isn't mine?" Zheng Long argued, "It's clearly Ji Qinxue's. When did it become yours?" At this moment, a cold female voice came from behind Ding Ming. "Ding Ming is right. What's mine is his." Zheng Long was stunned. Ji Qinxue had already returned. His expression seemed to have calmed down a lot, but his murderous intent was still sharp. Jin Yuanquan took a deep breath and spoke again. "Boss, oh no, I should address you as Madam now. If Madam wants the necklace, why don't you just look for the Chancellor?" Ji Qinxue was so angry that he laughed. "Jin Yuanquan, oh Jin Yuanquan, you've always been a person who only knows how to play petty tricks. You don't have a big picture. To put it bluntly, you're a fence-sitter. You'll fall to whichever side the wind blows." Jin Yuanquan was very patient. He said calmly, "Madam, I don't quite understand what you're saying." Ji Qinxue said coldly, "When you want someone, you call him boss. When you want to lock someone up, you call him Ji Qinxue. Now that there's an expert present, you call him Madam. Do you really think that I agreed to be the Chancellor's wife with Wen Yang?" Jin Yuan's expression did not change. "You did agree to it back then. Am I right to address you as Madam?" Ji Qinxue said coldly, "I agreed to it because I didn't know if my mother was dead or alive. I just buried my mother with my own hands. Do you still think that I will agree to it now?" Cheng Ming's eyes narrowed. "Ji Zong, rejecting the Chancellor is not a good thing. Besides, the Chancellor's wife has a high status. If I were you, I would make a wise choice." Hearing this, Ding Ming had already guessed what was going on. He laughed mockingly. "I find it strange. You guys conspired to injure her, steal her equipment, lock her up in the dungeon, cruelly kill her parents, and ask her to marry you. In the end, you want her to make a wise choice. General Cheng Ming, you're quite famous in the Empire. I've always respected the soldiers on the front lines. If it were you, how would you deal with this matter?" Cheng Ming immediately looked at Jin Yuanquan with a hint of anger in his eyes. Jin Yuanquan did not dare to answer. In fact, this was what he was most afraid of. Chancellor Wen Yang was only interested in the necklace. Logically speaking, once Ji Chinxue got the necklace, it would be game over. However, this group of men had active minds, especially the Tenda Music who was lying on the ground. Everyone knew that Ji Chinxue was the nation's goddess, a peerless beauty of the generation. Therefore, many of them had bad intentions and tried to make Ji Chinxue stay. The problem was that no one expected Ding Ming to suddenly appear at this time. If Jin Yuanquan had to choose, Ding Ming was definitely not to be offended. However, Chancellor Wenyang was even more so. Return the necklace to Ji Chinxue? Was that even possible? When he saw Jin Yuanquan's hesitant expression, Cheng Ming turned around and left without another word. He was here because he was ordered by his superiors to ask about this matter. When he heard that there was such a matter, he did not care about it at all. Since they were acting on their own accord, then they would have to face the wrath of others. When he saw Cheng Ming leave, Zheng Long was immediately dumbfounded. This, Ding Ming smiled. What else is there to say? Jin Yuanquan took another deep breath. Pardon me for asking, but what is the relationship between Mr. Ting and the boss? Why does he have to meddle in the internal affairs of Beidou? You really know how to bullshit. Internal affairs? Ding Ming simply pulled Ji Chinxue over and put his arm around her slender waist. What do you think is the relationship between us? Jin Yuanquan and Zheng Long's faces immediately turned pale. When Ji Chinxue said that Ding Ming was her boyfriend, everyone thought that it was a joke and did not believe it. However, Ji Chinxue did not seem to have any intention of resisting at all. Instead, she obediently let Ding Ming hug her. This was going to be a big problem. If the two of them were really lovers, then Ding Ming was not here to cause trouble today, but to take revenge. Ding Ming also had some thoughts. Ji Chinxue was wearing armor, so when Ding Ming hugged her, he did not feel much. However, there was a unique feminine fragrance coming from Ji Chinxue's hair, which made Ding Ming feel very comfortable. This smell is really good. Chapter 10:20. Of course, he wasn't going to let Ding Ming take advantage of him for long. A moment later, Ji Chinxue broke free from Ding Ming's grasp. It looked like he was about to step forward. Forget it. Let me handle this. Ding Ming pulled her back decisively and gave her a meaningful look. Ji Chinxue knew that Ding Ming wouldn't do something without a reason, so he slowly retreated to the side. Ding Ming looked at Zheng Long, who kidnapped old lady Ji. Zheng Long didn't answer. Ding Ming reached out with one hand and sucked the heavily injured Zheng Zhantao back to his feet. It seems like your boss has given up on you. Well, what are you trying to do? Zheng Zhantao was extremely shocked. He couldn't muster any strength in Ding Ming's hand. Ding Ming looked at him expressionlessly. It's very simple. I'm going to treat you the same way you treated the old lady. After saying this, a strong light appeared in his palm. Zheng Zhantao suddenly spasmed violently. His entire body shook uncontrollably, and he couldn't even make a sound. In less than 10 seconds, Ding Ming tossed him to the side. At this moment, Zheng Zhantao was like a pile of mud on the grass. Jin Yuanquan and Zheng Long both stared at Zheng Zhantao in shock. Zheng Zhantao had still been breathing before, but now his aura was gone. This didn't mean that he was no longer alive. His life force was still there, but his aura of origin energy had completely disappeared. You crippled him? Zheng Long was extremely shocked. He really couldn't tell what method Ding Ming had used. In fact, this was the Diamond Star melting art. He had uprooted all the origin interfaces in Zheng Zhantao's body and directly seized the origin energy in Zheng Zhantao's body. Zheng Zhantao was now an ordinary person. What awaited him was merciless hunger and torture. If you want to starve someone to death, then I'll starve you to death. This was Ding Ming's principle. Zheng Long was still in a daze. Ding Ming reached out again and sucked Zheng Ping in the distance in front of him. He used the Diamond Star melting art again and turned Zheng Ping into a pile of mud. With a plop, Ding Ming let go. Zheng Ping fell to the ground and stopped breathing. At this moment, in the eyes of Dulin and Tenda Music, Ding Ming was like the god of death that was about to descend. They also knew that they would soon be next. Tenda Music was the oldest and had the deepest foundation. Just now, his family jewels had suffered a heavy blow, but the origin interfaces in his body hadn't been damaged. Therefore, he struggled to stand still and rushed toward Ding Meng again with a roar. His movements were still very fast, but Ding Meng was faster. Ding Meng flashed in front of him and raised his hand to cut his forehead. Tenda Music's head immediately tilted, but he didn't fall because his whole body was bound by telekinesis. He was as soft as a strand of noodles hanging in the air. Ding Meng opened his hand, and a kukri knife appeared in his palm. This was the weapon that little arrow used when he was alive. Ding Meng directly threw it to Ji Qinxue and said, "You do it." Ji Qinxue stepped forward with a cold face. In the past, she rarely fought with her own hands. However, when she thought of how much her mother had suffered during her lifetime, her heart was filled with hatred. She raised her hand and slashed with the knife. A cold light flashed, and Tenda Music's head disappeared. A large amount of blood spurted out from the wound on his neck, and the grassland was immediately filled with a bloody mist. Perhaps this wasn't the most frightening thing. What was really frightening was the expressions of Ding Meng and Ding Meng. Ding Meng remained cold and expressionless, while Ji Qinxue, who had always been gentle, had a cold expression on her face. Even though Tenda Music's blood splashed on her face, she didn't care at all. These two people killed people as if they were mowing grass. Strictly speaking, they didn't treat them as humans at all. Dulin, who was far away, was scared out of his wits on the spot. He immediately knelt on the ground and said, "Jizong, I was wrong. I was blinded by lard. I shouldn't have tried to deal with you in the first place. Please be magnanimous and spare me this time." Ji Qinxue was unmoved. Ding Meng slowly walked toward Dulin. "I was wrong. I was really wrong." When he saw that it was Ding Meng who was approaching, Dulin actually started crying. The necklace is with the head of state. The head of state just went to planet 32 of the rainforest system. He said that the necklace can unlock the seal. "Jizong, please spare my worthless life. I beg you." After hearing this explanation, Ding Meng stopped in his tracks. Ji Qinxue's telepathic thoughts were transmitted to him. You can consider sparing his life. He's not a bad person, but he can't stay in the sect in the future. Ding Meng nodded and summoned a kukri knife. He threw it in front of Dulin and said, "Show me your sincerity in begging for mercy." Dulin was stunned. This meant that he would be spared, but what did he mean by handing him a knife? "Get out of Beidou. I don't want to see you again," Ji Qinxue said coldly. "If you ever see me again, you'll definitely die." Dulin was stunned. This was going to banish him forever. However, after thinking about it, he gritted his teeth and picked up the kukri knife. He decisively backhanded the knife and cut his own shoulder blade. With a crisp crack, his entire left arm was severed at the shoulder. The bloody, severed limb fell onto the grass. It was very eye-catching. Dulin almost fainted from the pain. Ding Meng stared at him and coldly spat out two words, "Not enough." Dulin's face immediately drained of blood. He knew all too well why Ding Meng was so overbearing. For origin ability users, losing an arm or a leg was a small matter. This was because the medical pod could still regenerate the limb. However, if the limb had its origin, the medical pod couldn't be regenerated. It would have to be regenerated from scratch. This was worse than killing him. Dulin's true strength was concentrated in his lower body. Ding Meng had seen this long ago. When he saw Ding Meng's expressionless face, Dulin gritted his teeth and chopped down again. With another crisp crack, blood splattered everywhere. The Hokuto Sokai disciples at the gate didn't dare to look. Ding Meng nodded in satisfaction. "You can leave now." Dulin couldn't walk out. He could only crawl on the ground with difficulty. Fortunately, two disciples risked their lives to drag him out. Ding Meng turned his gaze to Zheng Long. "I asked you, but you didn't answer. It doesn't matter if I ask you or not. You're going to die anyway." It would be a lie to say that Zheng Long didn't feel guilty. His strength wasn't much higher than those who had fallen. He didn't even have a chance of winning against Ji Qinxue in a one-on-one fight, let alone against the powerful Ding Meng. "You dare touch me?" Zheng Long gritted his teeth. Ding Meng smiled. "Tell me, why wouldn't I dare?" Zheng Long said angrily. If you touch me, you'll be making an enemy out of head of state Wen Yang. Ding Meng smiled even more happily. There's something you might not understand. Wen Yang has always been my enemy. He did all these things to avoid me. As for you, you're just a good-for-nothing who plays dirty tricks behind my back. I don't care if you dare or not. If I want you to die, you'll die. That's impossible. Zheng Long panicked. Of course it's impossible. You don't have the final say. Ding Meng sneered. Zheng Long turned his head decisively. Old Jin Yuan Quan didn't react. He just replied calmly, yeah. Zheng Long said, let's attack together. Jin Yuan Quan said, okay. Even though he said this, he didn't move at all. Unfortunately, Zheng Long didn't know this at all. His figure flickered as he charged forward. Zheng Long was still slightly stronger than the people in front of him. The disciples at the gate couldn't see his movement technique, but he was only slightly stronger. He wasn't ridiculously strong. As such, Ding Meng stood there quietly until Zheng Long's palm wind surged toward him like a flood. Ding Meng stretched out his hand and flicked it lightly. A bright star immediately flew into Zheng Long's palm. Zheng Long felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His entire body was shaken back to his original position. When he sat up, Zheng Long felt as if his palms were being burned by thousands of soldering irons. The pain was so intense that he couldn't feel the existence of his arms at all. When he raised his hands again, he was shocked to discover that his arms were gone. His originally powerful arms had been reduced to 2 bare bones. His hands had been completely melted away by high-temperature origin energy. Zheng Long let out a strange cry, then closed his eyes and fainted. At this moment, there was a surge of commotion at the gate. No one dared to watch the show anymore. All the experts from the 3 major sects and the Fengyin group couldn't even last one move in front of Ding Meng. No one thought that the remaining president could resist Ding Meng. Jin Yuan Quan had been watching all this coldly. He had already seen that there was really no room for negotiation. You can keep your composure. Ding Meng was also observing Jin Yuan Quan. Jin Yuan Quan said, Ding Meng said, since you sided with Wen Yang, you must have gotten some benefits. Jin Yuan Quan still snorted coldly and didn't answer. Ding Meng suddenly laughed. I can tell you responsibly that although you're stronger than these people, you have no chance against me. Is that so? Jin Yuan Quan suddenly took off his suit and tie. His whole body exuded a ruthless and sharp aura, and his whole body was wrapped in a layer of black fog. Ji Chenxue said in surprise, no wonder you want to monopolize the Beidou sects and groups. It turns out that you've already become a warrior of the demons. Jin Yuan Quan revealed a sinister smile. Do you know why I spared your life back then? Ji Chenxue was a little surprised. Oh. Jin Yuan's eyes flashed with greed. The head of state has already promised me that after he's done, I can use you as I wish. Ji Chenxue laughed. Aren't you being too confident? Jin Yuan Quan looked at Ding Meng again. Others are afraid of you, but I'm not. Ding Meng said calmly. Being afraid and dying are 2 different things. There's no necessary connection. Since you want to die, then bring it on. Jin Yuan's figure flashed, and his whole body turned into a layer of black fog that immediately surrounded Ding Meng. It was as if a spinning black force field was revolving around Ding Meng. This aura was so sharp that Ji Chenxue felt a faint pain on his face. As the president of the congregations, Ji Chenxue was well aware of Jin Yuan's strength. 3 years ago, Jin Yuan Quan was still a Wargod-level origin ability user, but now it seemed that this demon's aura was close to 400 billion points. His progress could not be said to be slow. It seemed that in the past 3 years, not only had Wen Yang recruited a large number of experts, but he had also transformed them into demons. However, Ding Meng laughed. No matter how much energy you have, it's just an empty shell. You haven't even mastered the most basic Black Dragon wave. What's the point of doing these deliberately mysterious things? Is this the benefit that Wen Yang promised you? You really have the confidence to show it in front of me? Chapter 1021. In essence, demon energy was evolved from the origin energy of the dark matter. The difference between demon energy and the divine light essence was that demon energy was mixed with many negative emotions, thoughts, and hostility. Thus, demon energy evolved into demon energy. This was the opposite of the divine light warrior's philosophy. In fact, everyone who had been on the battlefield had experienced this before. When everyone gathered in the darkness before dawn, they all felt cold. It wasn't because of the weather, but because everyone knew that they were about to go to the front lines and kill people. Naturally, they would feel murderous, and murderous intent would make people feel cold. This kind of emotion was most suitable for demons to cultivate. At the end of the day, whether it was demons, Protoss, or even human origin energy users, the true essence of martial arts lay in the foundation of a large amount of actual combat. Although Jin Yuan's energy index was high, his foundation was still lacking. Speaking of which, a mid-level warrior with an energy index of 400 billion could indeed crush any Ares or lords, but if he encountered a true expert, it would only be a bluff. It made sense that Ding Meng looked down on him. You don't even have the most basic demon's techniques like the cloak and the black dragon wave. Where did you get your confidence from? No matter how fast Jin Yuanquan circled the center of the field, Ding Meng was too lazy to even move. He opened his palm, and a strong light appeared in his palm again. Bang! 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 A series of rapid noises rang out. Many divine lights were released and formed a circle around Ding Meng. All of the black fog was absorbed by the singularities, and the black fog of the force field gradually dimmed. Not long after, Jin Yuan's true body was revealed. That's it. Ding Meng couldn't help but laugh. Ji Chenxue also had a look of disdain. Jin Yuan's energy index had just reached 400 billion, and now it had dropped to 100 billion. Ding Meng's diamond astral art was really amazing. Back then, he had learned the assimilation technique and the phantom technique in entropy silence, but he hadn't been able to learn the diamond astral art. In the future, no matter what, he would find Ding Meng to learn it. Jin Yuanquan took a few steps back, looked at his body, and asked in horror, "What did you do to me?" Ding Meng said calmly, "It's nothing. I just used my holy light energy to offset your demon's energy." Offset? Jin Yuan's eyes were filled with even more shock. This logic was very simple, and he also understood it. However, he still refused to believe it. This was like two low-level origin ability users, one using heat and the other using ice. Water and fire neutralized each other. The problem was that it was because the other party's level was low and their energy wasn't strong enough that they would use such a primitive move. However, they were interstellar cultivators. Would they be willing to use such a huge amount of energy to offset it? In other words, Ding Meng's level was no longer in the ranks of interstellar martial artists, so this bit of energy was nothing to him. 400 billion points of energy was nothing to him. Jin Yuanquan suddenly felt a huge shadow looming over his head. He looked at Ding Meng in horror, and his feet involuntarily took a few steps back. At this moment, he truly understood the feelings of those people in front of him. Why would Dylan rather harm himself than beg for mercy? It was because he was truly afraid. After taking a few steps back, Jin Yuanquan turned around and ran. His figure flashed over 100 meters. "You still want to run?" Ding Meng coldly snorted and waved his hand. A rainbow origin energy mirror image in the shape of a kukri blade shot out from his palm. This origin energy battle blade flew behind Jin Yuanquan as if it had grown eyes. Wherever it passed, the grass turned into a sea of fire. The lake water was instantly vaporized, and the surrounding buildings were all crushed into fine powder. In Jin Yuan's perception, with the battle blade as the center, a monstrous wave formed by heat energy swept towards him from behind. It was completely impossible for him to run away. Jin Yuanquan gritted his teeth and suddenly stopped, turned around, and pushed out with both palms. A fiery red torrent of origin energy also surged out. The momentum seemed vast, but as soon as it met the battle blade, it immediately turned into ashes. Jin Yuan's pupils contracted. How could the opponent's origin energy be so strong? However, the situation did not allow him to question it. The battle blade whistled as it broke through the torrent. Jin Yuan's palms once again exerted force, and all the origin energy in his body was pushed to the limit, forming a curved plating layer in front of his palms. He thought that he could resist for a while, and then he would use the force to quickly escape. With a crisp ding, the plating layer was like a piece of paper. The battle blade effortlessly pierced through it into countless specks of light that dissipated into nothingness. Then, it pierced through Jin Yuan's arm and finally through his heart. Bang! Jin Yuan was also set ablaze like a paper doll. His entire body burned with raging flames, and in the end, he turned into green smoke and disappeared without a trace. Not even his spiritual body was left behind. When the smoke and dust finally settled, the entire lake garden had turned into a sea of flames. Even the surface of the lake was ablaze. Dingmeng turned to look at Ji Qinxue. Has the old madam been buried? Ji Qinxue's expression darkened again. It's not practical to bury her, so I cremated her body. Dingmeng also knew that she was in a bad mood. Let's go. Ji Qinxue nodded. Since we know that when Yang is up to no good, then we have to get the necklace back. Dingmeng thought for a moment, then activated the positioning chip on his wristwatch. Not long after, the air around them began to ripple, and several cracks appeared like water ripples. In the blink of an eye, the exquisite divine Aero spaceship appeared on the grass. The connecting cabin quickly opened, and the person who came out to greet them was actually Ling Xingqi. What's going on? Dingmeng noticed that Ling Xingqi's expression was very serious. Ling Xingqi said, "We were just about to look for you." Dingmeng said, "Let's go up and talk." In the command center, Little Rascal, Little Love, and the others were all there. Xinjie was skillfully controlling the various interfaces, and his expression was just as serious. When he saw that Dingmeng had returned, Xinjie didn't say much. His fingers quickly tapped on the interface, and a huge screen was brought up. Dingmeng was shocked. The combined fleet's golden elephant mothership? Xinjie nodded. I originally couldn't hack into it, but I tried today, and I actually managed to get in. The screen showed the scene of the Golden Elephant Mothership's command center. They could see that the inside of the command center was a mess. Many control areas were in ruins, and dozens of staff members were lying in pools of blood. Many elders and generals were also lying on the ground. It looked like the combined fleet had been ambushed. Xinjie explained, "This is a long-range transmission. I can't control the starship's system yet, but from the looks of it, it doesn't look like an ambush from the outside world. Even the Devouring World and the Frogman Kingdom can't ambush a super fleet like this." Dingmeng nodded. He knew that Xinjie's analysis was very accurate because he had already seen the pattern. Right now, the casualties in the command center were all from the Holy Grail Federation. There was no sign of anyone from the Norse Empire. Lu Xiaobing was also lying in a pool of blood. It looked like she was still alive. As the camera adjusted, Dingmeng saw that Lin Kejia was also injured at the southeast corner of the command center. His hair was disheveled, and he was leaning against a chair covered in blood. He was panting heavily. "Can you send me up?" Dingmeng asked decisively. "But I can." Xinjie was a little hesitant. "I can only send you up one way, but I can't send you back. Our spaceship can't enter the sector where the fleet is." Dingmeng also understood this. The Golden Elephant Mothership itself was powerful enough, and the Grassroots Empire's design was impeccable. If the Divine Arrow Mothership really teleported into the fleet, the situation would be disastrous. It was not realistic to send the entire ship, so they could only send people one way. "Send me up too." Ling Xingqi also spoke. She could also see that something big had happened. Dingmeng glanced at Ji Qinxue and an ugly woman. "Only the four of us will go up. The rest of you shouldn't go." "It's useless even if you go." Xinjie was already operating the control panel. Of course, he also understood that Elephant and Mengyan's strength was not enough to go to the combined fleet. Those who could directly attack the command center must be first-class experts. 10 minutes later, a dot of light appeared above the command center's control panel. The dot of light quickly turned into ghost eyes. Ding Ming and the other three walked out of the teleportation array, and ghost eyes quickly disappeared. When they really arrived at the scene, they were greeted by the smell of blood. An ugly woman frowned and said, "It's a cold weapon. That's fast." Ling Xingqi was also an expert with swords. She could also see that the staff of the scene were all killed with a single slash. With a single slash, both the staff and the control panel were smashed into pieces. That was why the scene of wreckage was everywhere. Ding Ming glanced around. Lu Xiaobing and Xie Feishi were actually not dead. The two of them collapsed on the sofa in the resting area, but their breathing was very weak. "You guys go and treat those two. I'll go and see how the doctor is doing." Lin Kejia's condition was not good. Almost all of her ribs were shattered. However, this was also a blessing in disguise. She was sent flying by the huge aftershock. She crashed into the metal wall and fell down. If she was in the central core area, she would probably have died. After a small amount of healing energy was transferred, Lin Kejia's face regained some color. "You're late. What happened?" Ding Ming could not wait to ask. "I felt that something was wrong just now. I actually cut off the connection with you." Lin Kajia struggled to stand up. That yin he suddenly attacked without warning. He killed almost everyone here and teleported away, Yinhe. Ding Ming suddenly remembered the short and thin old man in a long robe. He was the director of the Norse Empire's parliament. They did something to the main control system. "I'm afraid the situation is more serious than we thought." Lin Kajia stumbled over to the main control panel. Following Lin Kajia's operation, the main control panel did not show a screen this time. Instead, it showed a mirror image of an ellipsoid. It looked like a drink bottle. The bottle was full of energy in the form of flowing light. However, only a small part of the energy was rotating inside. Beside the image was a number. 18, 5%. Seeing this number, Lin Kajia's originally rosy face turned pale again. Ding Ming's heart sank. "Looks like something big has happened." An ugly woman asked, "What is this?" Lin Kajia said, "The ship's energy reserves are now less than 20%. An ugly woman's mouth fell open. Even if she did not know much about starships, she now understood how big of a problem this was. Chapter 10:22. The Golden Elephant Mothership was a stellar-level warship. No matter how advanced its system was, energy storage was the most fundamental guarantee for such a colossus. Without energy storage, it was nothing more than an empty shell. Lin Kejia fumbled around the control panel in a flurry. Ding Ming could tell that this data master was looking for traces of the previous command. "Where's the warship's energy being used?" Ding Ming asked. Lin Kejia searched for a long time before raising his head in shock. "They've activated an antimatter power directional short-range transmission, trapping a large amount of energy at a fixed location." Ding Ming's mouth was agape. He obviously did not understand these technical terms. Fortunately, his wristband vibrated at this moment, and voice communication was established. Xing's voice rang out in time. "Ding Ming, I'm looking at the image. I'll explain it to you briefly. The people from the dynasty have transferred the energy storage inside the Golden Elephant Mothership away using a space jump." Lin Kejia's voice was pleasantly surprised. "Is this Mr. Xingjia?" Xingjia immediately replied, "It's me, Dr. Lin." Lin Kejia said, "I'll give you the system authority. Can you remotely control the system and find out where the energy storage has been transferred?" Due to the urgency of the situation, Xingjia did not waste time with her. "Thank you, Doctor." While the two of them were communicating, Ding Ming and an ugly woman were completely stunned. The energy storage of the Golden Elephant Mothership was terrifying. It was said that the amount of energy required for a single maintenance of this kind of starship could not be calculated with units. It was an astronomical amount of resources. Not only did it include energy, but it also included silver core stones, silver core bodies, silver core crystals, trillions of crystal energy, nuclear energy, electrical energy. This was the technological crystallization of the Holy Grail Federation's national strength. Ding Ming had heard Sokka's comment before that if he obtained the energy of the 5 Holy Grail Federation motherships, Entropy Solitude could immediately be restored to 60% of the initial activation standard. Now that the experts of the dynasty had transferred the energy, regardless of whether they were martial arts experts or hacker experts, this was already a huge interstellar incident. What did they transfer the energy to? An ugly woman asked in shock. Xing's voice sounded in a timely manner at the northernmost point of Rainforest Planet 32. Ding Ming became expressionless. Sure enough, it has something to do with Wen Yang. At this time, CF Feishi supported Liu Xiaobing and walked over shakily. We were all fooled. Liu Xiaobing's face was pale, as if she had received a great shock. Ding Ming had been extremely displeased with the two of them before, but now that he saw them like this, he could not say anything more. When Yang got the necklace, and Yin he immediately made his move. If I'm not wrong, it's the same for the other space carriers. How many golden elephant warships are there this time? No matter how arrogant Liu Xiaobing was, she didn't dare to talk back. 3 in total. You guys still have some brains left, Ding Ming said calmly. 3 of the 5 space carriers have been mobilized, and the remaining 2 were left in the Federation just in case. If all of them had been mobilized, they would probably have become empty shells by now. Ji Qinxue and Ling Xingqi also walked over. Ji Qinxue's expression was very ugly. President Zheng Fangying isn't here? Liu Xiaobing stammered. He's not here, he's missing. Ding Ming pondered and said, the wormhole, the necklace, and the energy storage. I understand now, he had his eyes on the golden elephant warships from the beginning. CF Feishi obviously didn't understand what Ding Ming was mumbling to himself, but Ling Xingqi suddenly asked Liu Xiaobing. Even if he stole the energy, he should have the authority to do so. Otherwise, how could he send a command? Liu Xiaobing gritted her teeth and said, I didn't hand over the authority. Other than me and Dr. Lin, only President Zheng Fangying has the authority. Ding Ming said, there's no need to argue. Zheng Fangying is also coveting the forbidden land of the demons. Ji Qinxue frowned and said, the Divine Light Necklace also has the ability to store energy. Logically speaking, the stronger the user, the more energy it can store. However, I don't think anyone can store the energy of the 3 space carriers, right? Even if they can, these are all technological energy, and the conversion rate isn't that high. What's the meaning of transferring the energy storage away? Ding Ming said coldly, I'm just afraid that things aren't as simple as you think. Xing's voice rang out again, and his tone was very serious. Ding Ming, I suggest that you all hurry back to Planet 32 immediately. I have a very bad feeling about this. I'm afraid that something big is going to happen there, and this kind of accident might not be something that can be handled by humans. Ding Ming nodded, but then changed his mind. It's too slow for spaceships to fly in now. There's not enough time. It's best to teleport over. Lin Kejia hurriedly said, we can teleport. With the remaining energy, it's enough to teleport you all over. Ding Ming was a little surprised. Doctor, you should know the situation in the rainforest periphery. Teleportation is very difficult. Lin Kejia said, don't worry, I've also installed the Starbow Group's warp mirror system on this ship. However, I can't teleport mechanical units. At most, I can teleport the 4 of you to a position near the command center on Planet 32. Ding Ming said, that's enough. In that case, I'll have to trouble you to begin, Doctor. Lin Kejia looked a little hesitant. Ding Ming was a little puzzled. Doctor, is there a problem? Lin Kejia shook his head. You all have to be careful after you get there. Ding Ming nodded. Thank you for your concern. We will. Seeing that Ding Ming had finished speaking and was about to walk towards the main passage, Lin Kejia called out again, wait. Ding Ming turned around curiously. Doctor, do you have any other questions? Lin Kejia bit his lip as if he had made a great decision. Ding Ming, you must be careful of Mr. President and Miss Nanxuan. Ding Ming was shocked. Although so many people had died here, President Nanxuan and a few other key figures were not here. Could there be some other reason behind this? However, Lin Kejia did not want to say more. Hurry up and head to launch capsule number 4. The teleportation will start in 5 minutes. At the same time, Planet 32 was shrouded in darkness. But even in the dark, the black hole in the sky was still clearly visible. However, all the black holes in the sky had disappeared, leaving only a huge black hole hanging above the spaceport. To be precise, this black hole was more like a giant interstellar vortex. It was constantly absorbing the energy currents rushing up from below. The huge spaceport was completely shrouded in a black fog. It had long lost its previous brilliance. The spaceport looked like a black pool. The pool was constantly spewing out gusts of black energy currents into the sky, which happened to be absorbed by the vortex above. Seeing this shocking scene, the hearts of Ding Meng and the other 3 sank. Planet 32 could not establish quantum communication with the outside world, so they could not get Lin Kejia's opinion. What's going on? Ji Qinxue had never seen such a big scene before. Ding Meng stared at the vortex and said, "It should be a space-time tunnel." Ling Xingqi was also quite knowledgeable. She nodded and said, "Yes, it is a space-time tunnel, but it's not powered by technology. It's powered by demons." An ugly woman stared blankly at the black hole in the sky. Her face was extremely frightened. She even involuntarily took a few steps back. Ding Meng decisively pulled her back and said sternly, "You know what this is, right?" The ugly woman was frightened by him and immediately regained her senses. She even stuttered when she spoke. "I heard General Gong mention before. This is a high-level demonic wind array." Ding Meng knew that she was not lying. This was because what she said was the same as Little Rascal's judgment. "Anything else?" Ding Meng asked. An ugly woman said, "It looks like the array has been activated." Ding Meng and the other 2 were shocked. "It's been activated?" An ugly woman's face was full of shock. But what? Ling Xingqi was also surprised. This demon wind array was not simple to be able to scare an ugly woman to this extent. An ugly woman said, "I heard that when the array is activated, it's the same as when Miao Xing Temple is activated. There are a lot of resources that could be absorbed and used." Ji Qinxue frowned and said, "But it doesn't look like there are any resources. Instead, it looks like the black hole is absorbing the energy of the spaceport. But where did the spaceport get such powerful energy from?" An ugly woman looked at Ding Meng. "Do you still remember Lin Fei? Wen Yang received a backlash when he injected energy into the array at the center of the 5th Star Lake Island?" Ding Meng was stunned when he heard this. He quickly released his telekinesis to scan the area. He finally understood why an ugly woman would ask such a question. Back then, the Divine Light Array had produced the effects of the Devourer's sacred lake teleportation, Xinguang Technology's dimensional jump, and the demon's imprisonment. The only difference was that the energy of the demons was the dominant force. However, there was also the power of the Devourer's sacred lake teleportation and Xinguang Technology's dimensional jump, but it was very weak. There was also an even weaker energy. This energy seemed similar, but he could not name it. Ding Meng was also shocked. "You mean?" An ugly woman waved her hand in fear. "I'm just guessing. I might not be right." Ji Qinxue was curious. "What's going on?" Ding Meng was expressionless. Logically speaking, after the demonic wind array is activated, there should be a large amount of mana. But now, this energy is creating a space-time tunnel. The black hole should not have taken shape yet, but it's already so big. Ling Xingqi nodded. Even the Golden Elephant battleship could not create such a large space-time rift. Are they trying to teleport to somewhere? No. Ding Meng waved his hand. You might be wrong. With such a large space-time tunnel, even if galactic warriors were in it, they would not be able to withstand the corresponding cosmic storm. Ji Qinxue was stunned. Could it be that someone from the other end of the tunnel is trying to teleport over? Ding Meng finally said something shocking. "I'm afraid that it's not a person that's being teleported over, but something else." Ji Qinxue and the other 2 were stunned. Now, they finally understood. With such terrifying energy, this space-time tunnel probably spanned billions of light years, and connected to a different world on the other side of the universe. When it was fully formed, what would be teleported over might be the true masters of the demonic sky empire, or an army of demons, or even a prehistoric beast. But no matter what it would be a devastating disaster for the human world. This time, even Ding Ming was impressed. Wen Yang was not just playing with fire. He was playing with fire. Chapter 1023. Shall we go over? An ugly woman suggested. Ding Ming, however, shook his head with a grave expression. Although the black storm at the spaceport had been shooting towards the sky, in Ding Ming's perception, the magnitude of this energy flow was enough to make one feel awestruck. Even he could not tell the exact number. He only knew one thing. This energy flow was at least 10 times stronger than his own. Anyone who dared to approach, it would be crushed to pieces. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. Ding Ming, this is the demonic wind teleportation array of the demonic sky empire. It's already halfway through. It will connect to another main star system 300,000 light-years away. My judgment is that it will send a true galactic powerhouse. This is not something you can deal with. An ugly woman's face was blank. Ji Qinxue and Ling Xingqi, on the other hand, were pleasantly surprised. It's Senior's voice. This was indeed Sokka's voice. Ding Ming did not expect this demonic wind teleportation array to actually alarm solitary entropy. He was also surprised. You've come to planet 32? Sokka's replied. I'm right beside you. Ding Ming turned around and saw a white metal sphere the size of a finger floating in the air. Sokka's voice came from inside the metal sphere, but the metal sphere did not have any aura. Ding Ming said, But I can't see you. Sokka's replied, This sphere is the initial form of solitary entropy. This is to avoid detection. Holy cow, the technology of the AG people was truly unimaginable. Sokka said, The situation is a little urgent now, so I had to come here. The energy channeled by this array is too strong. I just checked. Other than the magic energy sealed by the demonic wind teleportation array itself, there's also a large amount of technological energy. It should be the energy storage of the Holy Grail Federation's Golden Elephant Starship. In addition, there's also a huge amount of silver core crystals and kinetic energy, generating a total of 12 billion megabytes of energy. F***CK. Even though Ding Ming and the others were experienced and knowledgeable, they were still shocked by this number. What did it mean? It must be noted that the energy consumption of the Flying Star City was around 520 plus megabits, which was the energy required to power a large starship. Now that the energy consumption had been increased by 23 million times, it would be child's play to drive a planet, twist a space zone, or change a galaxy, not to mention a starship. Ding Ming finally knew what Wen Yang had been up to during this period of time. That damned bastard must have transferred all the energy from the large corporations of the Federal Empire here, as well as the energy storage of the 3 space carriers. Sokka said, This matrix is surrounded by the demon's repulsive force, but I can send you inside. What you need to do is to find the energy conversion core and interrupt the matrix's transmission. You must not let it take shape. Ding Ming asked, What about you? Sokka said, Instead of using such a huge amount of energy for transmission, it would be better to use it for my solitary entropy. Of course, doing so would also increase the risk of us being exposed. No matter what, you must stop them now. Immediately. Ji Qinxue looked at the metal ball and asked with some doubt, Senior, are you going to absorb this energy? However, Sokka's did not answer. The metal ball shot into the sky and turned into an exquisite white sphere with a boom. Its size was no less than the vortex. It was a black hole in the universe in the truest sense of the word. In an instant, it began to devour the energy flow from the spaceport. This scene was quite shocking. The energy flow that shot into the sky was actually divided into 2. One was absorbed by the vortex, and the other was absorbed by the solitary entropy. Ding Ming was impressed. No wonder Sokka had said that the solitary entropy was a starship, a military fortress, a weapon, and a super singularity. This F** king absorption ability was stellar level. It was invincible. Suddenly, Ding Meng and the other three's vision blurred. When they looked again, they were already on the spacious helipad of the command center. There were no people or spaceships in the plaza. Further away, there was a circle of black energy flow shooting upward. It was obvious that the source of the energy flow was underground. Let's go. Ding Meng did not dare to delay and rushed toward the terminal building. He could see clearly with his telekinetic vision that there was a shuttle ladder behind the first floor of the terminal building. It led straight down. Before he could run into the terminal building, a large group of people rushed out of the hall on the first floor. Upon closer inspection, he saw that they were all old men in military uniforms, and their military ranks were not low. The lowest rank was a senior colonel, and most of them were one-star generals. The old man in the lead looked like a third-star general based on his badge. When he saw Ding Meng, his expression changed. No wonder the Chancellor said there was a problem outside. It's you guys. An ugly woman drew her black sword. I'll hold them back. You guys go down first. Can you handle it? Ding Meng was a little surprised. There were 34 Imperial soldiers in this group. Their combined strength was not to be underestimated. An ugly woman gritted her teeth. Time is of the essence. If we let the demonic wind formation take shape, everyone will be in trouble. We have to hold them back. She did not wait for Ding Meng to reply. She turned into a phantom and rushed toward the crowd. At this moment, the gate of the terminal building turned into a black mess. The sound of weapons clashing, flesh bursting, and cries intertwined. It was difficult to see what was happening inside. Ding Meng was still very decisive. Let's go. There were a total of 5 shuttle ladders, but they could not stop the 3 of them now. Seeing that there was a dynamic password lock on the control panel next to the shuttle ladder, Ding Meng did not bother to study it. He reached out and hit the ground with his palm. A large hole was blasted open in the ground. The shuttle ladder lost control and fell with a rumble. Ding Meng and the other 2 jumped into the hole and used the most primitive method to go down. The underground of the command center was indeed a hidden military fortress. As soon as they walked out of the shuttle ladder, a spacious metal hall appeared in front of them. Ling Xingqi scanned it and said, "There's no defense system." Ding Meng and Ji Qinxue both nodded. Those who could break into this place could not be stopped by technological weapons and defense mechanisms. The metal hall was not semi-enclosed. At the end of the hall was a staircase that led downwards. At the end of the staircase was another hall, and so on. The control core was buried deeper underground, but the halls were bigger than the one before. After passing through 7 halls, they finally saw someone in the 8th hall. In the empty metal plaza stood a lone man. It was the boss of the Apocalypse group, Zhong Lin Fei. Be careful. Ling Xingqi had already stopped. He has a strong scent of demons on him. Zhong Lin Fei was surprised. So, it was you 3 divine light warriors who were playing tricks. The situation was urgent. Ding Meng did not want to talk nonsense. Do you know that your daughter was killed by Wen Yang? Zhong Lin Fei grinned. Quickly remove that ball thing from above. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you. Ling Xingqi decisively summoned her divine light saber. At the same time, she sent out a telepathic message. Ding Meng, protect Qin Shui. The necklace is of utmost importance. Leave this to me. Ji Qinxue was a little surprised. Miss, the Zhong Lin Fei is not below me. You. Ling Xingqi immediately interrupted her. It's up to you and Ding Meng at the crucial moment. Don't waste any more time. I'll cover you. As soon as she finished speaking, Ling Xingqi turned into a white ray of light with her saber and attacked Zhong Lin Fei. The next scene was the same as on the ground. They could not see anyone at all. They could only see 2 rays of light, one white and one black, intertwining with each other. The tinkling sounds in between were as dense as firecrackers. Seeing that Ling Xingqi had stalled Zhong Lin Fei, Ding Meng and Ling Xingqi continued to advance rapidly. At this moment, Ding Meng could already feel the demonic aura of the core area. They were not far away. They would arrive after about 10 more spaces. Suddenly, his telekinesis vision was blocked. Two extremely dense auras blocked his path. In the center of the metal hall stood three people. It was Yan He, Guan Xinqing, and Zheng Fangying. This is bad. This was Ji Qinshue's first reaction. However, Ding Ming shielded Ji Qinshu behind him. Ji Qinshu could control the divine light necklace. Before he obtained the necklace, Ji Qinshu could not be harmed in any way. Go back. This is not a place you should be. And he still had the demeanor of an old scholar. Ding Ming looked at Zheng Fangying. He said coldly, "The new president of the Holy Grail Federation. Who would have thought that one day you would become a hired thug for the Empire?" Zheng Fangying was still smiling. "You're wrong. We're all interstellar warriors. We're all in pursuit of better resources and power." Ding Ming did not beat around the bush. "What do you want to send over?" Zheng Fangying smiled. "This is not something you should worry about. You should first send the flying units that the higher-ups sent over. I'll pretend that this never happened. You can still be the carefree Ding Ming. Go back to being the CEO of the Bingy Group." Ding Ming did not reply. However, Guan Xinqing turned to Ji Qinshu and said, "Ji Zong, come over. Without your necklace, we would not have succeeded. After all, we are family." Ji Qinshu laughed coldly. "Have you asked your first madam about this? Aren't you afraid that she will be jealous?" Guan Xinqing's face darkened. "From your tone, are you planning to follow Ding Ming?" Ji Qinshu smiled. "That's right. I plan to follow him. Even if I don't follow him, I won't follow an old man like you. Don't even think about taking advantage of me." Guan Xinqing's expression changed again and again. However, it eventually became relaxed again. "Don't worry. After we take care of this kid, you will still be my man." At this time, Ding Ming had already secretly activated the first three origins. Previously, Jin Yuan Quan and the others in Tenda Music were all low-level people. However, Yan He and Zheng Fangying in front of him were not small fries. If he wanted to enter the core of the energy source, these three people in front of him had to be eliminated. Zheng Fangying put away his rare smile and said earnestly, "Little Ding, you were born in a refugee camp. It is actually not easy for you to reach this point today. It is not too late for you to turn back now. Return to the Holy Grail Federation and continue to make your Bingy group bigger and stronger. You are now worth trillions and have a lot of wives and concubines. Isn't it better to live a luxurious life? Why do you want to get involved in this muddy water? Young people should know how to cherish. So you also know that this is a muddy water." Ding Ming could not help but laugh. "Are you planning to fish in this muddy water? If so, how about counting me in? As for whether or not we can fish, it depends on our own abilities." Chapter 1024. Upon hearing Ding Ming's reply, Zheng Fangying shook his head helplessly. His expression was one of pity. "Sai, why do you have to do this? You're a member of the Federation after all. You're young and promising. Don't be fooled by his usual amiable and smiling demeanor." In fact, he was very sinister. Before he could finish his sentence, his entire body floated over without any warning and suddenly struck out with his palm. Bang! Ding Ming actually extended both his palms to block the attack. The air instantly exploded. Ji Qinshu looked shocked. Even Ding Ming's body froze from the impact. "Huh?" Zheng Fangying smiled again. "It's a pity that you're so young." Ding Ming opened his mouth and spat out a small puff of black smoke. He could not help but sigh. "I've really underestimated you. It seems like you're quite capable of becoming the acting president." Actually, he was also a little surprised. He had never heard of Zheng Fangying before. However, judging by his attack, he was at least a beginner martial artist. It seemed like the new president had also come into contact with the demons during the 3 years he had been away. Since he had become a martial artist of the demons, it was only a matter of time before he fell into the arms of Wenyang. Ding Ming stretched out his hand with a serious expression. "Qinshu, step back." Ji Qinshu immediately nodded. She knew that there would be a fierce battle here. Zheng Fangying was also gesturing. "Guanzong, please step back as well. This kid is a tough nut to crack." This time, before he could finish his sentence, Zheng Fangying's figure blurred slightly. The next moment, he appeared in front of Ding Ming. This time, both his speed and strength had increased significantly. Ding Ming had taken the attack head-on because he was worried about Ji Qinshue's safety. However, this time he was prepared. He quickly channeled his 5 origin points and raised his hand to attack. Zhang Fangying's palm was in front and his body was behind. The wind from his palm even pushed out 3 square black curtains. It was a typical demon's cape. The purpose was to imprison Ding Ming. This move was indeed effective against martial artists of the divine light. However, Ding Ming's palm flashed with a strong light. His hand blade did not miss. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With 3 rapid sounds, the 3 demons' capes were immediately reduced to smoke. The hand blade was like a white light penetrating the black fog. It struck Zhang Fangying's face like a thunderbolt. Zhang Fangying was shocked when this masculine aura approached. He did not expect Ding Ming to be unafraid of the demon's cape. Shocked, he put his palms together and pressed them together. The hand blade was firmly caught by his palms. Unexpectedly, Ding Ming moved sideways. Although the hand blade was caught, it turned into an elbow. With a loud bang, it hit Zhang Fangying's cheekbone. Boom, boom, boom. Zhang Fangying was hit by this elbow and rolled on the ground. Countless steel plates were blown away. Even the underground metal layer lit up with a white light. This overwhelming force made Zhang Fangying unable to get up in time. He was really surprised. The database evaluated Ding Ming's strength as a martial artist. However, these 2 attacks were not only at the level of a martial artist. Elder Yin. Zhang Fangying turned his head and looked to the side. And he nodded with a serious face. He was an expert. Naturally, he could see that Ding Ming was stronger than 3 years ago. He slowly took 2 steps forward and grabbed the air. A long black saber appeared in his hands. This saber was similar in shape to Ling Xingqi's divine light saber, but it was much smaller. And he looked at it carefully. It was as if he was admiring a flawless piece of art. His eyes were cold and satisfied. Ding Ming also looked at the saber. His opponent had not used any strength yet, but the saber was already emitting an extremely strange aura. It was as if there were countless ghosts attached to it. If one stared at it for too long, they would see illusions. Ding Ming felt as if he was looking at a scene from hell. Suddenly, Yin-He casually swung the saber. This saber was really ordinary. However, the steel plates on the floor were lifted up as if they had been enchanted. Then, they were torn into dust. An invisible, extremely sharp force burst forth. Ding Ming had already switched his vision to that of the devouring realm ghost. He could see that this energy flow was like a gust of wind or a curtain of rain. It was coming straight at him. Everything in its path was torn into pieces. This was exactly the same as the situation on the Golden Elephant battleship. Those people on the battleship must have been killed by this saber. This saber was not something that could be blocked by ordinary martial arts. Ding Ming opened his palm and raised it. An egg-sized divine light singularity was summoned. He slapped the singularity with his other hand. The singularity immediately exploded with powerful energy. The divine light essence formed countless white sword shadows. Like a school of fish in a river, they quickly swam toward the saber wind. For a moment, white light flashed wildly in the hall. All the sword shadows automatically disappeared when they collided with the saber wind. However, the saber wind was also dissipating. Waves of black mist rose and slowly dissipated. The curtain of rain formed by the saber wind was not only weakening, but also retreating. Yin-He's expression darkened slightly. This kid really had some skills. He then casually swung his saber 3 more times. The curtain of saber wind, which was originally at a disadvantage, immediately expanded. It actually stacked into 3 layers, pushing the sword shadows toward Ding Ming. The corners of Ding Ming's eyes twitched. This old man, Yin, was probably an intermediate martial arts fighter. Ding Ming thought to himself, well then, as the director of the Norse Empire's parliament, let the Empire's martial arts shine forever. Teacher Zhao student, I will fulfill your long-cherished wish today. Circles of strong light once again erupted from Ding Ming's palm. It completely formed a halo. The torrent pushed out by the singularity instantly expanded several times. Now, it had completely turned into a pillar of light. The sword's shadows in the pillar were even more intense and dense. It was no longer a school of fish swimming in the river. Instead, it was a river formed by a waterfall falling from the sky. The sword's shadows in the river seemed to have disappeared. It was as if they had turned into a gust of wind. However, it gave people the illusion that it was a golden dragon roaming the four seas. This was the sword of Zhao's lone sword. Ding Meng had now completely comprehended and broken through. The sword flew through the air, and the shape followed the sword. The tip of the sword was like an alligator soaring into the sky. Its strength was like a dragon, and its shape was like the wind. He had already mastered this move. He did not need a sword to use it. Boom, 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 boom. The 3 layers of saber curtains were repelled again. Not only did the floor of the hall explode violently, but the air also distorted and collapsed. In the end, the walls were deformed by the explosion. The entire hall was distorted. Yanhe's pupils suddenly shrank. He really didn't dare to underestimate Ding Meng, but he found that he still underestimated the other party. At this critical moment, everyone didn't dare to test the other party's strength, nor did they dare to hold back. Every move they made was a big move, but they didn't expect Ding Meng to be able to counterattack. Seeing that the waterfall was about to rush in front of him, Yanhe twisted his wrist. The saber spun rapidly, forming a black disc in front of him. As soon as the sword rain poured down, it splashed in all directions. The entire hall was split into 2. In the middle was a black ravine about 10 meters wide. Seeing this deep ravine, Zhang Fangying could not believe his eyes. Is Ding Meng this powerful? And he also took a deep breath. After so many years, there's finally someone worthy of my full strength. Ding Meng smiled and said, "You're not good enough." And he was not angry. He raised his saber with both hands and swung it a few times on the spot. Suddenly, he slashed the ground with his saber. With a loud bang, all the light in the hall was extinguished. In an instant, the hall was plunged into endless darkness. In the darkness, countless human-shaped mirror images scattered like flowers. Ding Meng finally understood why he had such a strange feeling when he saw his opponent's saber. It was as if there were countless vengeful spirits attached to the saber. Now that these vengeful spirits had really manifested, it was as if they had been activated by mana. They left the saber and turned into mirror images that filled the entire hall. These human-shaped mirror images were wearing all kinds of armor and wielding sabers, swords, axes, and halberds. They were like ancient warriors that surrounded them from all directions. If Yanhe could only create 1 ancient warrior back then Yanhe could create at least 30 ancient warriors with a single swing of his saber. This Yanhe was more than 10 times stronger than Guanwuming. This was no longer a group of warriors, but an army from hell. Even Ji Qinxue, who was a distance away, could not keep her eyes open. The sharp aura of the demonic clan caused her to feel a stinging pain on her face even though she was so far away. What kind of pain would it be like to be in the middle of it? At the sight of this magnificent scene, Ding Meng immediately activated the first 8 origin points in his body. He put his palms together, mustered all his strength, and pushed them forward. A stream of invisible energy immediately shot out from his palms. This energy was similar to Yanhe's casual swing of his saber. A transparent water curtain immediately filled the entire hall. It was more like an invisible wall that was pressing down on the army from hell. This was the Overlord's mountain-crushing force. When this martial technique was cultivated to this level, it was not inferior to the large plasma energy shield on the starship. Chi, 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 chi. When the human-shaped warriors came into contact with the water curtain, they were like sand soldiers crashing into an iron wall. They were all crushed into powder and disappeared into smoke. The number of warriors crashing into the water curtain increased, and the water curtain turned into a black curtain of smoke. However, the black curtain did not stop there. Instead, it slowly pushed forward. Zhang Fangying's pupils contracted. This was an all-around attack with no blind spots. You'd better not even think about dodging. Yin's pupils also contracted. His strongest attack was simply sending himself to death in front of Ding Ming. That's right, it was sending himself to his death. Let's go, Yin shouted in a low voice. However, when he and Zheng Fangying turned around, they were dumbfounded. In the distance, Guan Xinxing had already turned into a pile of white bones. The same water curtain had appeared behind them at some point in time. The two waves of energy were converging toward the center. Ding Ming was deliberately squeezing them to death. You've gone too far, Yin roared. It sounded like a roar, but only he knew that his fear far exceeded his anger. Ding Ming's two energy walls were beyond the scope of the Overlord's mountain-crumbling energy. They were a combination of divine light essence, solid source energy, and astral wind, combined with high-level psychic power. Yin He and Zheng Fangying had never seen something like this before. They could not even imagine it. As the two walls quickly closed in, Yin He, Zheng, and Fang Ying even lit up their shields, but the two shields were instantly crushed like soap bubbles. No matter how beautiful the colorful soap bubbles looked, in the face of absolute force, they were illusory and could not withstand a single blow, shattering even faster as they came. Oh no! Yin He and Zheng Fangying screamed at the same time. Their screams were cut off halfway. The two large walls had completely closed. The director of the Norse Empire's parliament and the acting president of the Holy Grail Federation were squeezed into human-shaped flames. The flames quickly extinguished, and the two of them disappeared completely. Chapter 1025. The underground core of the command center was a super spacious metal hall. As soon as Ding Ming rushed in, he saw a giant silver egg standing upside down in the center of the hall. This was the core power reactor. It could be said that this was the largest and most advanced reactor Ding Ming had ever seen. First of all, it wasn't made of superalloy, but liquid metal. The energy inside the egg was like a bucket of boiling water, constantly changing colors. In the center of the energy was a necklace that was floating. It was visible to the naked eye that it was releasing energy in all directions. It was impossible to imagine the degree of purity and vastness of the energy lines that had materialized. As soon as Ji Qinxue came in, the divine light necklace immediately flashed. It was obvious that it had a connection with Ji Qinxue. The reactor was about 100 meters high, and at the bottom was a circular arch platform. Two people stood on the arch platform. One of them was Wen Yang, who was wearing a black suit. He smiled and said, "You're finally here." He still looked so gentle, elegant, and handsome, full of the mature charm of a middle-aged man. If it were not the first time they met him, it would be hard to believe that he was the one who started all this. However, Ding Ming was not surprised by Wen Yang, but by the person standing next to Wen Yang. "It's you." Nanchuan was still wearing the Taoist robe, and she was smiling. "I just said that if the person who came was Ding Ming, the director and the president would not be able to stop him." Wen Yang nodded. "You're right." Ding Ming and Ji Qinxue were both stunned, especially Ji Qinxue. She never thought that Nanchuan would be standing with Wen Yang. Could it be that they were in cahoots? She quickly rejected this idea. She suddenly realized that she had never really understood this close friend of hers. Who was Nanchuan? What was her real identity? What was her real face? How did she cultivate her strange abilities? Which side did she belong to? No one could really figure out. Ding Ming muttered, "Back then, it was Lin Kajia who helped you enter the underground world." Nanchuan nodded and smiled. "Yes." Ding Ming said, "That explains why so many people died on the Golden Elephant warship, but Dr. Lin was only lightly injured." Nanchuan was still grinning. "For my sake, Director Yin won't be so ruthless." Ding Ming understood. So for the sake of Zheng Fangying, Lu Xiaobing was also spared. Nanchuan smiled and said, "More or less. So don't worry, I won't hurt Qinxue either." Ding Ming frowned. He did not understand. At this moment, Wen Yang clapped his hands. "Ding Ming, welcome. Let us welcome the new era together." Ding Ming's frown deepened. "The new era?" Wen Yang nodded. Yes, the Norse Empire, the Holy Grail Federation, the Devouring World, and the Frogmen are finally going to be unified. Ding Meng's heart sank. Why do you say that? Is it because of the demonic wind teleportation array? Smart. When Yang smiled. In a moment, a powerful demons will arrive here from 300,000 light years away. It's time to end all of this conflict. As expected of the steward of solitary entropy, he knew all of this beforehand. Ding Meng said, "So you've become a slave of the demons." When Yang said indifferently, "There is no such thing as slaves in this world. The strong are respected, and the weak are scattered. After this demon king arrives, the world will be unified." Ji Qinshu sighed and shook his head. "You've been demonized. You've really been demonized." When Yang couldn't deny it, he smiled and pressed two buttons on the miniature console beside him. A hologram popped up from the bottom of the reactor. The content inside was very simple. It was just a progress bar. The current progress displayed on it was 62%. "You two are too late," Wen Yang explained calmly. "Although you guys have used some unknown thing to divert the energy, the progress has already reached 60% of the basic teleportation standard. The teleportation has already begun. It's only a matter of time before the Devil King arrives." He paused and looked at Ding Meng with a complicated gaze. "This is your last chance. Ding Meng, you know that I've always treated you as a confidant. If you and I work together, there's nothing in this world that we can't accomplish. Come, let's start this epic-making undertaking together." Ding Meng smiled. Many years ago, Chu Ming Liang also said the same thing before he died. "As for being a confidant, I'm ashamed. I've never met a confidant like you before, and I hope that I won't meet one again in the future." Wen Yang's eyes flashed with an imperceptible coldness. "At this point, do you still have any obsession?" Ding Meng sighed slightly. "Actually, there are some people who don't deserve to die. Zhong Yaoan, Han Yin, Guan Lin, Bai Xingfei." He said a long list of names. He believed that Wen Yang had a rough idea of who these people were. "Unfortunately, these people were still mercilessly killed by you," Ding Meng said faintly. "These people and their deaths have nothing to do with me. But the worst thing you should have done was to steal Ji Zong's necklace, starve old lady Ji to death, and hand Ji Zong over to Jin Yuanquan and the others to deal with." When Yang stared at him, "So you want to uphold justice?" Ding Meng shook his head and said, "I'm not that noble. I just want to tell you that we're not the same kind of people. If I want to accomplish something, I won't use your methods. If I want a necklace, I can borrow it from Ji Zong. If I want power, I can find a transit string to facilitate it. If I want a marriage contract, I can directly ask Ji Zong to marry me. If I want to reach the top, I won't kill innocent people, especially pregnant women. I believe you understand." When Yang let out a long sigh. "I've given you opportunities time and time again, but you don't know how to grasp them. So, this is the fundamental reason why you've always been weak, while I've always been able to call the wind and summon the rain." Ding Meng said, "It's time to settle these scores today." Wen Yang's lips curled into a cruel smile. "It's still too early for you to deal with me." Ding Meng said, "What do you mean?" Wen Yang said proudly, "Today is the day of the reunion. What should be settled will be settled, and what should come will come. There's no hurry." Ding Meng's eyes turned cold. In the distance, many different auras had already reached this supercore hall. When he came in, he had already scanned the hall. The bottom of this spherical hall was circular. He had come in from the tunnel at the 6 o'clock position, but there was more than one tunnel here. There were a total of 8 tunnels evenly distributed clockwise. Now, there were movements at the 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions at the same time. Even Ji Qinshu could sense that a large group of people was rushing here. At this moment, those who could break into this place, at the very least, were at the level of interstellar warriors. It was impossible for there to be any ordinary origin ability users. Of course, he couldn't wait. He was already communicating with Ji Qinshu telepathically. "Can you recall the necklace?" Ji Qinshu secretly shook his head. "No, the energy of the reactor is too great. If I recall the necklace, everyone will be buried here." Also, according to my observations, there's more than just a necklace inside. It should be the equipment of the demons. The necklace only serves to store energy, but it doesn't have the effect of injecting energy. Ding Ming frowned. Is there any other way? Ji Chinshua said, there's only one simple way. Occupy the control panel, cut off the transmission system, turn off the reactor, and recall the necklace. But this will take time, and it will also require your help. Ding Ming took a deep breath. If Wen Yang and Nanchuan joined forces, the difficulty would be very high. After 3 years, he believed that Wen Yang's strength would not remain stagnant. In fact, he had only seen Wen Yang in action twice. The first time was on Rainforest Planet 5, and the second time was in the subspace of the Apocalypse building. Both times, he had only seen Wen Yang in action for a short period of time. Although it couldn't be compared to his current strength, Wen Yang's improvement was quite impressive. In the current Federal Empire, there weren't many people that Ding Ming was afraid of. Wen Yang was one of them. It was precisely because he hadn't seen him in action that he couldn't estimate his strength. While they were communicating with their telepathic thoughts, a cloud of blue smoke suddenly floated in from the passage door at 7:30. Ding Ming and the other three's expressions changed. These were the people from the devouring world. 2 strange silhouettes appeared in the swirling blue mist. Ding Ming's lips curled into a smile. His smile meant that the newcomers were from his own camp. Sure enough, Lung Yin's figure appeared first. Ha ha! I didn't expect to find this place. Behind Ling Yin was a very young and handsome human. Although his face was unfamiliar and his aura was very weak, Ding Ming was very familiar with his aura. Seen your phone? The young man greeted him with a smile. Ding Ming, we finally meet again. Ding Ming looked at him in surprise. You've recovered? Zhen Fujin's face was full of pride. It's all thanks to the sect master's demon lake that I was reforged. Ding Ming smiled. You've been reborn. Congratulations. Zhen Fujin's strength was still very low. He was still at the warlord level from a few decades ago. However, he was very knowledgeable. He looked at the central arch. The Norse Empire hasn't improved much. They're still using the most primitive Milky Way Type 3 reactor. They can use a series of passwords to distribute the energy. When Yang and Nanchuan's expressions changed, Lung Yin smiled. You know how to operate it, don't you? Zhen Fujin said. It's a piece of cake. Don't worry, Sectmaster. Lung Yin smiled. That's good, that's good. Her Majesty is determined to obtain this energy. Seeing Lung Yin's happy expression, Wen Yang immediately understood. Could it be that this guy was using the energy in the reactor as the capital to operate the devouring world sacred lake? Ding Ming didn't care. It didn't matter who stole the energy or who transferred it. He just couldn't let it fall into the hands of the demons. Wen Yang smiled disdainfully. So it's Lung Yin. You guys are sneaking around in the devouring world. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Lung Yin stopped smiling. Wen Yang, don't think that the trash from the hidden front often comes to the Flame Star to play tricks. Our Majesty knows all about it. Wen Yang smiled even more disdainfully. Haha, other than the immortal Elemental King, what else do you have? What he meant was that the immortal Elemental King wasn't here in person. The few of them weren't enough for him. At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard in the 9 o'clock direction. The footsteps were very heavy. It felt like the tunnel was shaking with every step. It didn't seem like the footsteps of a normal person. Chapter 10:26. As expected, the person who came was not a normal person. Instead, it was a huge mutated frog with all sorts of alloys embedded in its body. When Yang smiled again and said in the language of the frogs, I was wondering who it was. So, it's the commander-in-chief of the army. This mutated frog was indeed laid on. Leiden's attitude was more polite. Thank you, Chancellor Wen Yang. Wen Yang frowned. Leidon smiled. I've been fighting for my whole life. I admire you a lot. This was not a polite remark. The war between the frogmen and the dynasty in the fertile chalk system had only become more difficult in the past half a century. It was all because of Wen Yang's strategy and arrangements. Leidon said, I admire you even more this time. You actually gathered such a large amount of energy. Thank you. From his tone, it seemed that the frogmen were also determined to obtain the reactor. A white-haired old man followed behind Laodon. This person was Zhongyu. When Zhongyu saw Ding Ming, he was even more polite. Mr. Ding Ming, we meet again. Ding Ming nodded slightly. When Yang sighed, Ding Ming, do you think you can accomplish anything by mingling with this mob? Before Ding Ming could answer, a seductive female voice rang out in the hall. Ha! Is this mob important? Great things are often not achievable by the main character. The voice seemed to be everywhere, but the air beside them rippled like water. The ripples formed black lines, which were clearly the energy of the demons. The black lines quickly gathered and formed into Julie, who was dressed in a black business suit, like a ghost. When Yang's face darkened, he could ignore the scum of the frogmen from the devouring realm, but Julie was also here. Now, the situation was reversed. Ding Ming's faction's strength had been greatly increased. Chancellor Wenyang, my father has always wanted to meet you, Julie explained. Wenyang nodded. Understand, Julie sighed and said, but you just have to walk this path to the end. Wenyang said, thank you, Fifth Lord, for your concern. Miss Julie, please take care of yourself. You don't have to worry about me. Julie sighed even harder. Do you know the demon lord who was teleported here? Wenyang was expressionless. I only know that after that person comes, our strength will increase like never before. Julie shook her head. It seems that you don't know anything about the overall situation. Wenyang frowned impatiently. Is that so? Yes. The one who answered was not Julie, but an old voice. Everyone was shocked. The voice clearly came from the 12 o'clock position, but they could not sense it with their perception. This proved that the person who came was terrifyingly powerful. When they turned their heads, they saw Long Hui slowly pushing a wheelchair towards the arch platform. An old woman was sitting in the wheelchair. This was Long Lin herself. Looking at her old and weak appearance, she seemed to be resting with her eyes closed. The others present might not know, but Ding Ming and Wenyang definitely knew how powerful this person was. They did not expect the reaction furnace to alarm so many powerful people. Seeing Long Lin appear, the corners of Wenyang's mouth revealed a smile again. Why is Madam here? Long Lin did not open her eyes. She said indifferently, if I don't come, the situation will be out of control. Wenyang's expression was very respectful. He even bowed. It's easy now that you're here, Long Lin said indifferently. Do you want me to help you solve the situation in front of you? I wouldn't dare. Wenyang's posture was very humble. I'll solve this matter myself. Long Lin also seemed to sigh. You're wrong. You can't solve this matter. Wenyang was stunned. Why? Long Lin slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of bright eyes. At this moment, she did not look like an old woman at all. Ding Ming realized that the aura of Guan Lin's mother was so strong that he could not peek at it. Long Lin's gaze fell on Julie. In her eyes, only Julie was the biggest threat. However, what she said surprised everyone again. Stop. No one was doing anything. How could she stop? Wenyang said, Madam, what do you mean? Long Lin said, turn off the reactor and stop the energy injection. What? Wenyang was stunned. Ding Ming and the others were also stunned. Weren't you the leader of the demons? Why did you ask them to stop? Long Lin sighed faintly. It's a good thing that you're ambitious. It's also one of the things I admire about you. However, it's not a good thing if you're too ambitious. Wenyang did not understand this kind of words, so he could only listen. Long Lin slowly explained. An ordinary man's wealth is his own ruin. You've gathered such a large amount of energy. It's like a child suddenly receiving a huge sum of money. The result is not what you want. Now, do you know what that mysterious flying unit is? Can the teleportation array really summon the evil monarch, as you predicted? Before Wenyang could answer, Lung Yin said, it's impossible to turn off the reactor. After saying this, she was the first to float towards the control panel. Nanshuan immediately flew towards her. Rayton laughed. Master, you're right. If you want to turn off this energy source, you might as well give it to me. After saying this, he also flew up and joined the battle. Lung Yin and Rayton worked together, but there was nothing they could do to Nanshuan. Nanshuan released an ice wall in front of the two of them. No matter how they used their martial skills, she would be able to convert them back. Dingming looked at the screen again. The progress bar was very slow. It was currently at 48%. There was still enough time to stop the energy injection from the reactor. Dingming moved his joints slightly and then slowly stepped forward. Seeing that Dingming was personally making a move, Wenyang had no choice but to secretly circulate his origin energy and focus 120%. It's time to settle the score between us. Dingming also flew out, using the standard Ding-style handblade with a backhand chop. This was Dingming's first real attack after cultivating in the silent entropy for 3 years. In Wenyang's eyes, this karate chop was not as simple as a karate chop. What he saw seemed to be a sudden surge of raging waves that came crashing down on him. The waves had yet to reach him, but the aura and energy that erupted from them were exceptionally shocking. Suddenly, a gigantic palm emerged from the waves. This was Dingming's karate chop, and it smashed towards him like the Buddha's palm. Wenyang knew that he couldn't dodge. If he dodged, Dingming would take over the platform. Once Dingming took over the platform, it was very likely that he would turn off the reactor. Wenyang's forehead glowed with black light. The black wind mark had been activated. He raised his palms, holding up a ball of black origin energy, and faced the incoming attack. Boom! A large amount of energy exploded in the form of a hurricane. The steel plate on the ground immediately turned into a sea of fire. Nanshuan and the others were sent flying, and Long Hui, who had been pushing the wheelchair, was turned into smoke. This kind of power was unimaginable to ordinary people. Wenyang had expected Dingming's strength, but he didn't expect Dingming to be this strong. Not only did his palms fail to block Dingming's attack, but he was also sent flying by Dingming. In reality, he had been sent flying several times in the air before he finally landed. After he steadied himself, he was surprised to find that Ji Qinxue and Feng Jianjin had used Dingming's cover to successfully rush up the platform. In other words, Dingming had precisely controlled his attack. He could send shock waves to his surroundings, but not behind him. Wenyang frowned. The situation before his eyes was difficult to handle. Long Lin, who was in the wheelchair, smiled at Dingming. See, everything you've done so far, isn't it what the spokesperson of the Hidden Front should do? Dingming was shocked, but he didn't have time to think about it. Feng Jianjin and Ji Qinxue had already started working on the control screen. The main system has been tampered with. It's locked. I can't turn it off. Feng Jianjin exclaimed. Ji Qinxue asked, "Is there no other way?" Feng Jianjin's fingers madly pressed on the control panel. "We can divert and weaken the energy inside. Please help us. We'll work on it at the same time." Seeing the two of them busy themselves, Dingming immediately turned around. What he needed to do now was to defend the platform. Wenyang stood still again and slowly opened his palms. Black mist surged in his palms, and his aura was unusually sharp. It looked like he was planning to use his ultimate move. All of a sudden, he gently slapped forward with one hand, and an invisible strand of energy floated toward the arched platform. This energy flow was not large in scale, and it looked like strands of gossamer. It did not seem threatening at all, but in Dingming's eyes, it was not inferior to a raging ocean. Dingming quickly upgraded the first 5 diamond origins. At the same time, he used Diamond Star Spell. An exquisite mirror image of a crown immediately covered the entire platform. He didn't care about Wenyang's attack, and Ji Qinxue also had ways to deal with it. However, Feng Jianjin couldn't block it. Even if he came into contact with the slightest bit of aura, he would die. Therefore, Dingming's shield had to protect Feng Jianjin. When this gauze-like energy floated up, it wasn't enough to shake the shield, but Wenyang didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Half a minute later, Dingming's expression changed. The shield's energy was weakening, and its color and sharpness were dimming. This mana seemed to have the effect of being devoured. The more energy you poured into it, the faster it would devour you. He didn't know what kind of demon's battle technique this was. Seeing that the shield was about to disappear, Ding Ming had no choice but to activate the first vortex origin. He crossed his hands and changed his hand gestures. Using psychic power, he immediately created a divine light singularity 5 meters in front of him. The singularity quickly spread and turned into an energy vortex with a diameter of 2 meters. After all the mana was poured into the vortex, it disappeared without a trace. This was the divine skill of the Ardent Sun divine technique, Extinction. It directly created a small space-time rift and transferred the opponent's energy elsewhere. With Ding Ming's current strength, he could only transfer Wen Yang's attack to the ground. Although the attack was obviously ineffective, Wen Yang didn't seem to have any intention of letting go. He continued to release mana relentlessly. This time, even Long Lin saw the problem. You're obviously no match for him. Why are you so persistent? After holding on like this for 5 minutes, Ding Ming suddenly discovered that the corner of Wen Yang's mouth revealed a trace of a strange smile. *T. How I've been tricked. At this moment, Feng Jianjin behind him exclaimed, "Oh no, we've been tricked. Not only has the reactor been tampered with, the power room has also been tampered with." Chapter 10:27. Ding Ming did not turn around, but he could clearly sense that the chaotic energy inside the reactor had changed color. It was originally colorful, but now it was completely black. The black color was the energy of the demons. It could be understood that the core was now pouring energy into the teleportation array. He scanned the gold bar again and saw that the completion rate had jumped by a large margin, 12%. At this time, Wen Yang stopped pouring energy into the array. He looked at Ding Ming with a smile, as if he had regained his confidence. Although Ding Ming was a technological noob, he understood Wen Yang's sinister intentions. He knew that Ding Ming was here to steal the necklace, so he had already tampered with the system. It was fine if Ding Ming did not tamper with the system, but if he did, it would cause the reactor to upgrade. Now the whole space was shaking, as if the underground building was about to collapse. Fujin Jun roared, "Get out of the way!" Unfortunately, Ji Chishuo did not listen because the divine light necklace kept flashing. The frequency of the flashing was very high, as if it was its own child. It was clearly calling for help, and it sounded very urgent. It was about to be rescued, so how could it leave at this time? The egg-shaped reactor suddenly expanded. Ji Chishuo's hands turned into Qilin arms, and it looked like he was going to reach into the reactor to take the necklace. "Don't go!" Ding Ming also shouted angrily. He reached out and grabbed Ji Chishuo's waist to pull him away. As soon as the two of them left the arched platform, a large amount of formless mana aura appeared in the 12 positions on the ceiling. Although it was invisible to the naked eye, one could easily sense it with their senses. These formless energies were converging on Wen Yang's body, and Wen Yang's aura was increasing at an alarming rate. "What's going on?" Ding Ming reached out to help Fujin Jin up. Fujin Shin's face was filled with fear. This power room has been modified. Not only can it help the demons absorb the energy released by the reaction furnace, but the power room is also moving toward the crack above. This isn't collapsing, it's rising. Ding Ming suddenly turned his head and realized that Wen Yang's energy index had already exceeded 10 trillion points. He was definitely an interstellar martial lord. To think that this kid had actually hidden such a move at the last moment. But surprisingly, Long Lin was still calm. She was still watching the show. She didn't seem to care. Julie also stood coldly at the side and didn't say anything. Wen Yang finally smiled. "You didn't expect this, did you? I already expected you to want to decrypt the reactor. It's a pity that this brother's skill isn't high. If it were Xinjia, it would be perfect." Ding Ming's face darkened, and he didn't reply. If Xinjia was here, he would have been able to decrypt all these tricks in an instant. In fact, this queen was the combination of the first and third generation queens. To be precise, she was the Dark Knight Enchantress herself. Back then, she could easily teleport Ding Ming across star systems. One could imagine how powerful she was. Long Lin was still expressionless. She looked at Wen Yang with pity. Now you know why I said that you don't know anything about the big picture, right? Wen Yang looked around angrily. He was flustered and exasperated. Get out here, you half-human, half-ghost. The Dark Knight Enchantress's voice was still laughing. Her laughter made people's hair stand. Poor, ignorant person. You can't even see my heavenly book body. You're delusional about unifying several countries and achieving something great? I think it's more like a fart. Do you know how childish you are? You want to take the energy for yourself? Have you asked for my permission? Wen Yang's face immediately turned the color of pig liver. He had never been ridiculed like this before, especially by a true expert. That kind of humiliation was simply unbearable. The Dark Knight Enchantress said again, since you've contributed, I'll make an exception and see you. I'll let you die in peace. As she spoke, the energy in the reactor changed from black to a strange green color. It was obvious that the Devouring World's poison had invaded it. Now, the Devouring World's power was controlling the reactor. The sacred lake was still shining with seven-colored light. After a strange light flashed, a figure appeared beside the arch platform. She was wearing a dark green robe and a vine leaf crown. Her face was beautiful and dignified, but she looked like someone who had been dead for a long time. There was no sign of life between her eyebrows. Just looking at her was enough to make one feel horrified. That was the Dark Knight Enchantress herself. At that moment, Lung Yin and Fujin Zhen were gone. They seemed to have been teleported away by the Dark Knight Enchantress. Even Lei Dun was nowhere to be found. You've seen my heavenly book body. Why aren't you kneeling down and worshipping me? The Dark Knight Enchantress's voice had an irresistible dignity. Wen Yang laughed. Worshipping? I think you haven't woken up yet. The Dark Knight Enchantress wasn't angry. She laughed and said, All-mouthy king, why aren't you doing anything? If you don't do anything, all this energy will be mine. You won't have another chance. Bitch! Wen Yang roared again. He rushed forward and struck out with his palm. Whoosh! A huge black wave burst out. The strong wind, caused by this palm, was earth-shattering. It almost filled the super space of the power room. It was as fierce as a storm, as fierce as a hurricane, as fierce as a storm, and as turbulent as the sea. In this terrifying wave of demons, there were many black dragons cruising around. There were even a few ancient beasts that no one had seen before roaring. To be honest, this was the strongest attack that Ding Meng had ever seen since he came into contact with the demons. Such an exaggerated and crazy attack made even Ding Meng retreat. Long Lin's wheelchair flew to a corner. Julie covered her face with her hands. This aura was too strong. On the arch platform, the Dark Knight Enchantress didn't panic. She spread out her hands and released a miniature mirror image of the sacred lake. The sacred lake spun rapidly in her palm and didn't dissipate. All the magical energy was sucked into it and then scattered in all directions. It gave people the feeling that she would transfer Wen Yang's magical energy to wherever it came from. After half a minute, the huge attack stopped. Not only did the Dark Knight Enchantress not move, but she was also unharmed. Wen Yang's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that his full-strength attack couldn't even tear off a piece of her rattan armor. How is this possible? The Dark Knight Enchantress sneered. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Now it's my turn. She also slapped out with one hand. What she slapped out wasn't the fierce and violent energy that Wen Yang had used. Instead, it was the mirror image of a green, poisonous snake. This snake was at least 20 meters long and was completely in the form of light. Its tongue hissed as if it wanted to swallow Wen Yang. This was the first time that Ding Meng, Julie, and Long Lin had seen this legendary figure in action. Now, they couldn't judge this poisonous snake just by its aura and energy index. As soon as the mirror image was released, even Ding Meng, who was immune to poison, felt a burning sensation on his face. When he looked back, Ji Chenxue had already fainted. His face had turned green. It was obvious that the poisonous snake's world-devouring poison was too strong. Even a divine light martial artist couldn't withstand it. Ding Meng grabbed Ji Chenxue's hand and secretly transferred some healing energy to him. In the center of the hall, Wen Yang obviously felt how strong his opponent was. He quickly raised several black cloaks of demons and formed a polyhedron around himself. At the same time, he slapped out a black wall of holy light in front of him. His intention was obvious. He didn't plan to fight back. He wanted to defend with all his strength. Chapter 1028. The hall was filled with bursts of green light. The poisonous snake's mirror image crashed into the wall of holy splendor. The wall collapsed, but the poisonous snake itself was also turned into ashes. Everyone could see that when Yang's wall of holy splendor had fused with the source energy essence and the demon source energy, it could indeed resist the devouring world martial skill. After all, the devouring world martial skill was mainly poison and supplemented by source energy. However, although the poisonous snake's mirror image was shattered, there was another smaller snake hidden inside the poisonous snake. It was even more delicate and green in color. It flew toward Wen Yang like a tadpole in a strange way. Wen Yang took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with anger. "Do you think you could defeat me with this little trick of yours?" In your dreams, strands of invisible energy seemed to float out of the polyhedron, firmly imprisoning the little snake in the air. The little snake's luster began to fade gradually, from dark green to dark green, from dark green to orange red, and from orange red to light yellow. The small snake's mirror image began to dim. This was clearly a sign of weakening. Wen Yang couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Ha ha," deliberately mystifying things. "I thought you were very strong. Even the immortal elemental king is only SOSO. The Dark Knight Demoness still didn't move. It was hard to see any changes in her expression from her dead face. However, Ding Meng and the others who were standing around her had extremely cold expressions. Long Lin's face, in particular, had an unprecedentedly serious expression. Wen Yang suddenly felt that something was wrong. He knew the temper of the Hidden Front's leader very well. There were very few things that could move Long Lin. "You?" Wen Yang realized that Ding Meng and the others were looking at him coldly. There was no hostility in their eyes. Instead, there was a trace of pity. It was like a crowd of onlookers looking at a criminal who was about to be executed. Very soon, he knew what was going on because he first felt a piercing pain on his fingertips. Following that, his fingers turned green. This green color spread up his wrists at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was definitely the strange poison that devoured the world. Moreover, it was a highly toxic poison among strange poisons. No matter how hard he tried to activate the origin point, he was unable to resist the poison. It passed through his palm, around his wrist, up his arm, and into his shoulder. Wherever it passed, his skin would turn green, harden, and wither, as if it was being burned mercilessly by a raging fire. He could block Dark Knight, Enchantress' poisonous snake mirror image, but he couldn't block the poison hidden in the mirror image. "Ah!" Wen Yang let out a heart-wrenching howl. He even tore at his own hair and danced with a crazed look in his eyes. Ji Qinxue was already awake. "What's going on?" Ding Meng was expressionless. "He's been poisoned. The poison has already seeped into his nerves. He's gone crazy in the truest sense of the word." With a plop, Wen Yang knelt on the ground. The poison had invaded his body and limbs. His legs had turned purple like rotten tree roots. He knelt on the ground, crying and laughing at the same time. He kept reaching out to grab something, but he couldn't grab anything. I'm in. Wen Yang cried out in pain. "I'm back. I'm finally back. I'm successful now. I'm the most powerful person in the world. I'm coming to find you. Wait for me. Wait for me." No one here knew who Min was, but since he was crying so painfully, she must be someone very important in his life. When people were about to die, they could always clearly remember the past. Ding Meng had experienced this before, so he could only helplessly sigh. Seeing Wen Yang's painful appearance, all the hatred he had for Wen Yang disappeared without a trace. Ji Qinxue also closed her eyes. She couldn't bear to watch. Wen Yang's body was already rotting. No one could have imagined that the all-powerful and glorious ruler of the empire would end up in such a miserable state. However, Wen Yang knew that this day would come sooner or later. When he walked out of that remote village many years ago, he knew this would happen. This was his biggest secret. Even when he was married to Zhong Yalan, he didn't mention it. At that time, he was still a teenager who hadn't awakened his origin energy. He wasn't an elegant young man, but a young woodcutter from a poor family. He and his lonely old mother depended on each other. Amin was the eldest daughter of the family next door. She would often meet him when she was herding sheep. A young man from a poor family and a young woman from a poor family. They weren't a match made in heaven, but at that age, they already saw each other as family. He really liked Amin, and Amin liked him very much. He would often sit on a small hill and tell Amin, who was next to him, that when he grew up and became successful, he would marry her in a grand manner. Later, Amin really did get married, but it wasn't to him. Wen Yang's family was too poor and couldn't afford it, so Amin could only marry someone else. The wedding was very lively. He sold the firewood he had been chopping for half a year in a small town near the border of the empire. He bought some money and sent it to Amin's family. He remembered that day. Everyone from the village had come. Amin's husband's family had invited guests. It was the first time he had eaten such a sumptuous feast. At the very least, he knew what wine tasted like and how delicious meat was. However, he wasn't happy. That night, when he returned home, he didn't say a word. He crawled into bed and covered his head with a blanket. He quietly cried by himself. Sometimes poverty didn't mean unhappiness. They could see that her form was not much different from a human's, but the black fog around her body made her faintly discernible, just like a real ghost. Ji Qinshuo sighed. Is this the true form of the demons? I'm afraid so. Ding Meng's expression was serious. He had already sensed that this General Henning's aura was not below his own. At this moment, everyone present, except for Ji Qinshuo, was probably at the level of Interstellar Marshal Saint or above. In the Holy Glory faction, this was considered a gathering of big shots. Henning's voice was indeed a muffled male voice, and it was a bit like an electronic echo, as if it came from the distant hell. After so many years, you're definitely not the leader of the Black Frog race. What kind of monster are you? Why do you know so much? The mother said with contempt. General Henning was a demon general. Has your strength fallen to such a low level? Henning suddenly said, I remember now. It's you. So it's you. Unfortunately, her voice was suddenly cut off, because at this moment, the black lake changed again. The black water kept fading, and the rainbow energy in the sacred lake started to roll again. It was obvious that the Dark Knight Demoness was secretly using her power. The mother laughed coldly. Lord Xian Yuan, after so many years, you are still so impatient. Henning and Julie did not say anything, but in Ding Meng's vision, Henning's figure was a bit blurry. The black fog on his body formed a storm that blew towards the arch platform. The color of the sacred lake was covered with a trace of black haze. It was obvious that everyone wanted to snatch the energy, and they were secretly using their power. Although Julie did not move, white light floated out from under her feet. The power of the four families gathered together, and the sacred lake became completely chaotic. Ding Meng was secretly speechless when she saw this. These four people didn't even need to use their fists and feet to exchange blows. Everyone was competing with their foundation and strength. The entire sacred lake was filled with rolling waves. This energy had already completely materialized, just like the dark ice energy of an ice element origin ability user. Kacha Kacha, it froze everything. The strength of this energy was truly hard to describe. Wen Yang's death on this day was truly not unjust at all. In fact, what surprised Ding Meng the most was the mother body. It had withstood the joint attack of the three families by itself, but it hadn't moved at all. Just by looking at Zhong Yalan's nonchalant face, one could tell that her expression was very relaxed. At this moment, there was an explosion above their heads. The ceiling of the power room was torn to pieces by a huge force. The entire energy center rose to the ground and broke through the ground of the terminal building. The huge space-time black hole in the sky was visible to the naked eye. The entire power room was flying toward the black hole. This slap sent out 3 long streaks of cold, cyan light that tore through space like a bolt of lightning. In Ding Meng's vision, Nansun's beautiful pink figure flashed like a light-speed cultivator. The cyan light streaks immediately shot into the depths of space, dragging long tails behind them. They couldn't hit her at all. Henning and the others were all dumbfounded. In this holy glory race, there was actually someone more powerful than them. This was simply unbelievable. Why? Ding Meng was a little dazed. Now, only he could see Nanxuan's figure clearly. Nanxuan seemed to be smiling. I'm very sorry, Ding Meng. I did hide it from all of you. However, I have never lied to Dr. Lin, Xingxian, Chen Shui, or you. No matter what, I will always be your friend. When she said this, her pink figure flashed in all directions. It was like a rain of peach blossoms. The rhythm was so fast that even Ding Meng's eyes couldn't keep up with it. This was because she was dodging all kinds of martial arts secret manuals from Henning and the others. One had to know that these 4 experts' attacks were all mirror images, air currents, and materialized energy. These attacks all had corresponding effects and confinement force fields. However, Nanxuan completely ignored these restraints. She was purely dodging physical attacks. One could imagine how powerful she was. However, Ding Meng didn't care about this anymore. He was already numb from the shock today. The most important thing was Nanxuan's voice and tone. Nanxuan didn't seem to be lying. At this moment, Ji Qinxue could also see Nanxuan through their telepathic link. She was even more shocked. Sister Sun, when did you become a warrior of the Night Luan Empire? Nanxuan's voice was very guilty. Qinxue, I'm sorry. I hid it from you for so long. I didn't want it to be like this. Follow Ding Meng and leave quickly. The people from the Night Luan Empire will be here soon. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. Nanxuan's figure suddenly stopped. She was already in front of Ding Meng. She looked deeply at the two of them. Ding Meng, take good care of Chen Shui. I believe in your ability. We will definitely meet again. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned into a fine pink pillar of light and disappeared. It was clearly some kind of special teleportation. Right above the petal pupil, there was a strange black substance that looked like a thundercloud. This was clearly Henning's flying unit of demons. But the most impressive thing was still the mothership. Right in front of the petal-shaped pupil, a gigantic spherical starship was flying backwards. This was the Frogman's Nether Sphere mothership. Not only was this super mothership larger than a normal mothership, it was also covered in a mirror image. This mirror image was a blurry human face, but everyone recognized this face. It was Chancellor Wen Yang's face. Amazing. An ugly woman was sincerely impressed. Even Ding Meng was nodding. This was not the mothership's true body, but a unique shadow created by using energy and the abilities of their race. The shadow and the mothership were one, and the mothership's true body was so powerful that even Ding Meng and the others could not imagine it. We should thank him, Xian Jie suddenly said. Ji Qinxue was curious. Why? Xian Jie explained. Everyone sent people back to the flying units, so the flying units will inevitably enter the wormhole. The reaction furnace has been completely located by the Night Luan Empire, and the wormhole here is like a snowball that is getting bigger and bigger. If it gets bigger, then whatever the other party sends over will also get bigger. The Nethersphere mothership is now flying backwards, and the surveillance system shows that it is also releasing energy, slowing down the reaction furnace's speed and slowing it down from getting bigger. Ji Qinshu understood. The mothership was not stupid. If things from another world were really sent over, whether it was the Frogman or the Devourer world, it would not be good for anyone. Ding Meng asked, "Can we leave?" Xian Jie shook his head. Not for now. This is already a 4-dimensional space, and no one dares to fly around recklessly before reaching the end. That way, they might randomly jump into the endless space. Most importantly, after the reaction furnace was located, it produced a strong suction force. With just our family strength, we can't get rid of it, Xiao AI quickly explained. Let's put it this way. The legendary matrix has completely merged with the reaction furnace, so we might as well see this light pupil as a whirlpool in the water. Our 4 families are floating around the whirlpool, and we're trying our best not to be sucked in. The purpose of the whirlpool is to send things up from the water. Once the target is sent up, the power of the whirlpool will weaken, and we will have a chance to leave. Ding Ming frowned. We have to see the powerhouse from the Night Luan Empire with our own eyes before we can leave. Xiao AI said something like that. Ding Ming smiled bitterly. If some interstellar powerhouse really comes over, we'll just be sending ourselves to our deaths. Xiao AI's expression was grim. The other 4 families are facing the same situation. In fact, Xinguang technology was a very valuable technology. Although the other 3 families were having a good time fighting, they didn't see it as a big deal. But the 5th Lord and Julie were the legitimate descendants of the Mao Xing family. They must have their reasons for not making a move. As expected, the Petal Starship began its counterattack after 30 seconds, and this counterattack was an eye-opener for everyone. The front of the Petal Starship spewed out countless energy points, just like the particle laser cannons on human starships. A large number of cannonballs were fired toward the Nether Star Starship in front of them. These artillery shells were also in the shape of peach blossom petals, and they didn't fly in a straight line. Instead, they flew in all kinds of unimaginable and strange trajectories. It was like a sudden explosion of a rain of petals, evenly distributed around the Dark Star Starship, and then instantly surrounded it. Boom! Rumble! Boom! The Frogman Starship was indeed tough. When the petals hit the surface of the starship, they only stirred up circles of powder. They didn't damage the starship. However, the Dark Star Starship was affected by a strong repulsive force. It flew backwards, even faster, and slowly floated towards the end of the tunnel. In just a few seconds, it disappeared. Was it blown into the depths of the universe? Or was the system so shaken that it lost control? F***CK. Ding Ming and the others were dumbfounded again. Was the Night Luan Empire's weapon system so powerful? No matter where the Pluto Star battleship had been sent to, the outcome was definitely not good. That was because Head of State Xiangyang's face had disappeared from the empty space, and the communication link had been cut off. He had been sent to a place that was at least tens of thousands of light years away. This scene must have been seen clearly by Dark Knight Demonis and General Henning. Not only did they not have time to react, but even Ding Ming and the others didn't realize the severity of the consequences. Little Love suddenly shouted, "The high-risk energy has locked onto us." Xin Jie quickly operated on the interface. Activate the Divine Light Golden Shield Defense System. This golden shield was built on top of the spaceship's original body with a trident defensive matrix. This was a very powerful and advanced defensive measure from Xinguang Biotechnology. The spaceship looked like it had been covered with an identical layer of plating. The plating's function was to convert the energy of the attack. Swoosh! A peach-like interstellar missile was thrown from the rear of the Petal Starship. It rolled over like a deflated rubber ball. Its speed wasn't fast. In fact, it was a little slow. However, Xinjie's face turned serious as he operated the interface. Just as everyone was wondering why they didn't dodge, the peach missile exploded and formed a circle of pink smoke. At this moment, Xinjie and Xiao AI had no time to explain. Their fingers moved across the control panel like raindrops falling on a plate. The speed of their operation was jaw-dropping. Ding Ming also saw Xinjie's thoughts clearly from the screen. In this situation, the Divine Arrow starship was the least affected because it was the smallest. On the other hand, the other families were the size of their starships, so the gravitational force was the greatest. Therefore, the Divine Arrow starship still had room to escape. Under the influence of the huge gravitational wave, the Divine Arrow starship turned around with difficulty and slowly flew backward. An ugly woman couldn't help but say, "Number 32 has already been destroyed. How can we escape?" Xings said, "You're thinking too much. There's no way we can return to the rainforest system. We'll thank the heavens if we don't get sucked in." At this moment, the Divine Arrow starship was completely covered in white light. The space-time rift was still expanding. It was like a white sea, completely filling up the entire tunnel. It was practically spreading to the rear of the Divine Arrow starship. Little Rascal's face was ashen. The Elder and Princess had actually secretly stored such a powerful torpedo. They were deliberately trying to kill everyone. Now that the communication link was completely cut off and the other families were nowhere to be seen, it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Should we use a short-range space jump? Xiao AI also turned to look at Xingia. Absolutely not. Xingia's expression was tense. We can't teleport inside the tunnel. If we leave the sacred Splendor Star system, even if the Divine Arrow starship jumps to the designated coordinates, the entire ship will be torn to pieces. It won't happen if we activate the SplitNet system. Xiao AI explained. We can teleport individually. At least everyone's safety is guaranteed. Xingia fell silent. We can't use the split engine unless it's absolutely necessary. Not good. Mangyan suddenly pointed at the screen and said, "The Yelwan starship is fine. It's catching up to us." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. When they looked up again, they saw a pink dot of light appear in the white torrent behind them. The Petal starship actually flew out of the torrent. Even such a terrifying space-time rift could not suck it away. It was simply too heaven-defying. It was just that the starship had shrunk a lot. It looked more like a unit of a spaceship. Little Rascal narrowed his eyes. They've abandoned the starship and are using the spaceship inside to escape. We have to speed up. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.